not legit is even though there is something to check, and they have to do certain things to keep it good. I believe that. I believe that there is a certain amount of that. But I'll go back to the point, and I'll just leave that topic altogether. But point is, there was a lot of people doing that. Whether they knew it did it on purpose or not, there's no way to know. But the point is, when they were doing that, now I know that's not good. Talking about your pineal gland or whatever, having a title specifically putting the importance on that, which is it's not good for your mind to see. It's basically reaffirming that, and all it does is make you go back to conspiracy stuff rather than stay on the spiritual stuff, which is a trick of the people that have infiltrated, unfortunately, this magical spiritual development community by putting out videos like that make you they don't really give you a remedy. They tell you, okay, change your water and this and that and the other thing, but that's what everybody else is already saying, and all they do is mainly focus on the fact that the government, or in Hitler's time, once again, with the music, Hitler also realized that fluoride was put in your water make people more less assertive, basically less aggressive, and more like sheeple, and more easily to maintain and listen and cooperate. So they did it in the jail as a test, because the poor jail people get it all the time and all that, and it worked. So they blame Hitler for that, but yet our governments are still doing it here today, and they don't actively deny it either. So therefore, once again, you can come to the conclusion, if Hitler did it, then why did we adopt Hitler's beliefs? Unless people like Bircher Wright, when they say the Nazi regime is actually in power right now, just under a different face and a different title, due to the fact that the fluoride could be calcifying your pineal gland, and it's under attack. Camps, Soviets having it, Soviet Union under Stalin. Not yet, but yeah, in a moment. But they don't know about those things, and people need to be educated on that. And like I said, when I float that idea out that Hitler and that we fought on their turf, well, the idea is that England was under Bergen-Belsen, Auschwitz, stuff like that. They don't know about the put down there in Palestine during that time. But then you can look at things like Paris and all, where they have these underground catacombs that are built out of skulls. And you can easily say, well, where did all the skulls come to make these catacombs? They have some of these skulls and bodies and femurs and like bones from the skeleton, the human skeleton. And they are human. They've been tested. And wondering how many people had to die to make this, and why they didn't make sigils out of these bones and stuff like that. There's a specific Max Egan episode you can watch, and he actually shows film, video, and pictures of that, and it's pretty crazy. But the point is, I can't know if these things did or did not happen. The only thing I know, and this is one other reason I didn't do the 9/11 thing, and it's never been completely proven, but you have people saying and coming out as government whistleblowers, and you can't see doing the air quotations there, whatever you want to call it. But you have these so-called whistleblowers coming out and going against government, and I've watched a few of these, and they come out saying that, but I'm the one. And Epstein being killed by, I don't know if it was another prisoner or a guard, but that was the notion they were punting. It said suicide is not a suicide anymore. It's an actual planned killing. And the picture is blurry everywhere except for Epstein's face. And Epstein's face was underneath, it looked like a guard. But I think they were trying to say another prisoner did it. But anyways, his face is the only thing that's not blurry. And it looks so photoshopped. It was unbelievable, because the guard's arm from his shoulder to his elbow, from his elbow to where his finger was making kind of like a triangle area, right? And then Epstein's face was out of that. Well, his head was almost twice the size of the man's arm. And the man's arm in a diamond, if you put whether it's real or fake, okay? If it's real, there's no way he killed himself, because he was about to rat on people. He didn't want to die, that's why he was going to rat. So why would he all of a sudden kill him? If that was the case, he wouldn't have ratted anybody out. He wouldn't have made the plea bargain. He would have just went to a regular population jail and just served a sentence and came out when he came out, or killed himself whenever he did it. He wouldn't have did the things he did. All right? That's if this thing is real. So if the things are real, then he was clearly did not want to die, and he was ready to make a deal for his freedom. Therefore, there's a reason they put him in that jail where you can't commit suicide and all that. So if this thing is real, then he was killed. So therefore, that tabloid thing that I saw himself. Listen, people are waiting descriptions and people, and people are so into this. Well, what do? You throw them a bone. You say, we caught this guy, the biggest guy ever. No one heard about Jeffrey Epstein. No one really knew about him too much before. I'm sure if you look now, there's a whole bunch of past about him that you could find. But if you were to do that before we heard his name or it was in the media, I'm sure that you wouldn't find very much at all about this man. But anyways, that's irrelevant now because you can't prove that either anyway. But the point I'm trying to get at is they threw a bone. Let's say we take this man, we say he's this, we say he knows this, and then we make it public, put him in front, whatever. I don't know if any of this stuff was on TV or not because I don't watch the news. And if they were smart, they probably did put it on TV where you could watch Jeffrey Epstein's case and all that, or at least see things of his case or showing little clips of it where, you know, he was frightened and he said he would fucking rat on people, which that doesn't happen in front of a court. That would happen in the back with fucking cops more likely, or whatever the case may be. So they threw the community a bone. And then this way people could stop being so vigilant on their own, doing their own research and stuff like that, and just be like, yes, we did it. We got it. We finally got what we wanted. Yes. Oh, this is so awesome. This guy's going to bring down all the biggest fucking pedophiles and all that. And and the biggest fucking maximum prison where no one has ever committed suicide or hasn't for like 40 years. You know, and even before that with like never, you know, 1 or 2 suicides ever, he was able to commit suicide. And because that looks ridiculous, they had to change it now to murder. And it's just a way to keep you on. Because it looks so ridiculous, it made people like, what? And then everybody changed their focus from what they initially had, what they were putting pressure on. Because they dropped this to get people to stop the pressure on the pedophiles and believing all government, because that was bad press. You know, they say there's no such thing as bad press, but however, they want you to focus on specific things, and that everybody was focusing on that too much. Maybe they were losing control of the variables. I don't really know because I don't pay attention to that either. But that's what it shows me, that they wanted to make it stop, or at least harshen up a little bit. You know, maybe people were making pretty good conclusions. Maybe too many people were changing. Maybe too many people weren't buying into it. Maybe it was too much for people to look at. So what they did was just threw everybody a bone with this guy. And they have to keep you on the hook. So once he's in jail, you know, everybody lets up, goes back to their day-to-day life, talks about how Epstein, this is such a good thing, everything's starting to change, blah, 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 blah. And then, boom, he's dead. Uproar. Everybody's upset. Everybody's, oh my God, they killed him, or he committed suicide before he was supposed to do this. It's an uprising, and it brings you back to conspiracy. Not back to trying to save little kids or whatever the case is, or trying to find the pedophiles, or trying to find the corrupt politicians and get them behind bars. It puts you back to conspiracy, which conspiracy is probably mostly controlled by the same people that we are condemning, you know, because if there's always a conspiracy, then you can't ever prove something. There's always going to be a conspiracy there, and you can never prove a conspiracy. Mia, go lay down. Hey, what's this? Leave her alone, please. Owen, leave her alone, please. Sorry about that. So they get back to conspiracy. So then not too long after he commits suicide, everybody's talking about that. You know, they had the controlled variables. Like I said in my last video, they figured it would go one or two ways. People would either believe this story, or people would either believe the story and think he did it, or come up to a conclusion being he's either killed or he's free and on an island somewhere. And then now, what they do? Well, they said, okay, well, now we know for 100% a fact or whatever, there's somebody claiming that they killed him. You know, I don't know. I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline, and that was the headline that he was killed. So I'm guessing that there's somebody either taking credit for it or they have some kind of proof, which it's kind of weird because it's a picture of the jail cell, but apparently those cameras went dead at the official story. None of those cameras were working, or they all went faulty at that time. And now all of a sudden it is legible and they are working. So that's just a little bit about that. And I kind of went off on a tangent, but that was kind of my point, that this stuff is just so fake and out in your face, and you got to watch this stuff. But that's the infiltration, like I said, and they want to get you back to conspiracy. They want everybody in conspiracy, and conspiracy has its place. It helps open people's mind. It helps you open your bottom chakra. It helps you realize that if we have so many conspiracies and the general public doesn't know this stuff, then it means the real stuff that we're learning isn't true, because you have the truth, and then you have the opposite of truth, and then you have a conspiracy in the middle. And the conspiracy in the middle is also not truth. The only truth we have is the fact that we know we were lied to, that this shit isn't true. Alright, sorry about that. I kind of forget where I was at, but I was talking about conspiracies and truth and all that shit again, so it's probably better off if I just leave it at that. But that's the infiltration I'm kind of talking about. They control conspiracies as well. And like I said about, well, you heard Max Egan say it, so I'm not going to pretend like it's my idea, because I listen to Max all the time, even though I may have said it before I listened to that, or maybe it was after, so I don't really know. But about the Alex Jones thing, I came to the same conclusion. About Alex Jones is similar to Max, and it could be just because I listen to Max, sometimes falling asleep to it. Maybe I heard that before I actually heard it with my conscious mind, but either way, it doesn't matter. Same conclusion about him, and that would be a great example of how infiltration to conspiracy happens. And I'm not going to go as far as say as everybody in the truth movement is a conspirator or working for whatever you want to think, Illuminati, Queen, Pope, fucking Vatican, government. Doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter, because we can't prove that either, whoever that is. We can kind of prove our government's doing some bad shit or whatever, but once again, we can't prove if it's... But that's all irrelevant. Point is, there are people out there in conspiracy and truth movements that are probably actually doing good and trying to get real information, all that. But once again, depending on where your information is coming, whether it's a whistleblower or just straight from fucking Google and from other secondhand witness or testimonies or, just people or whatever the case is. I mean, if you really break it down, how credible can you... If you can't really take a fucking whistleblower's word, I mean, maybe you can. But if you can't take a whistleblower's word, then who can you believe? Do you believe the government that's giving you the information? Do you believe the government that's opposing this information? Do you know what I mean? It's like the judge in the court case or the jury. What do? They hear the facts and they got to come to a conclusion. And that's the most fair we've come up with. Is 12 of your peers get to listen to your story, and from there get to choose if you get to live or die. And everybody has that right, by the way. If you have to go to court for anything, there might be some restriction. It might be only for criminal. I don't really know, but technically you have the right to a fucking jury. And I mean, that takes a lot of the court's money and all that. And I mean, if that's something you can do on everything from just a fine to anything else, I mean, I don't really know, but then you could do that, and they might just start dropping cases unless they can prove that there's a reason that you're doing that, or you're doing that for, to drop the case. But if you can actually do that without showing any bias or anything like that, then you might actually be able to drop your court cases, because by the time they get a jury together and have to do all the jury selection and pay all those people to be there, and there's witnesses there going to hear the shit you say and all that, it might just be, it's better just to drop this case and let them have the win, basically. So that's something worth looking into, which I've never looked into. So if you, you go to court for anything, but I want a fucking jury, I'm not guilty. And, the next step is, okay, if you're not guilty, you got to do this. And then your lawyer just tells you what to go along with. And, he told you if you plead guilty, I'm going to be able to get you at least reduced sentence. But now that you're guilty, well, unless you win, which is very unlikely, this is what you're going to get, right? And then you say, well, I fucking fire you since you're clearly not working for me and telling me all this shit. And yeah, no, fuck you. I want a fucking jury. Simple as that. It's my fucking right. And if I'm paying you, you should be doing what I fucking say. But once again, I'm off topic. So Jordan Peterson was the man you heard at the beginning of this. I think that's what I'm going to do. Once again, as you guys know my style, I record this and then I play it after. Very seldomly do I just come on here live. However, I am normally here live and playing this. And I'm watching it just in case anybody does watch me live and decides to comment on it. But yeah, so that's what I'm talking about right now. So anyways, that's a little bit about your rights. And like I said, it's something worth looking into. Anything you can arm yourself with is good to have when you go into court. The more tools you can have, the better you are. So that brings me back to Jordan Peterson, which I don't know if he's Canadian or not, as I haven't really done any research on the man himself. But he's a guy I was looking into about a year ago, I want to say. I fell into his stuff by accident, and I remember thinking, this is fucking amazing. I love his style, his outwardness, the fact that he is talking about the brain, and the fact that he talks about mythologies, be it maybe more Christian, more recently. He's done lots of talks about, sorry, I'm just fixing my fucking headphones. He's done a lot of talks about Christianity and the books of the Old Testament and some of the New Testament. But he actually talks about the fact when someone asks him if he believes in God or whatever, and this is basically people trying to bait him to answer wrongly or attack him. And, he does an excellent job against anybody. I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but there's a video about somebody trying to frame him. And I don't know if that means frame as in the literary term frame, the psychological term frame. Like if you have a strong frame, means you win the frame battle. When two people talk, there's always a frame battle going on. And the person with the stronger frame will generally win, and the other person will, not bow down to them or anything to that effect. But, the person who has the stronger frame will get his ideas to be believed, and the other person will lose. If you have an opinion and someone else's opinion, and you guys go into either an argument or debate, the person with a stronger frame. So anyways, there's a video out there saying Kate tries to frame him instantly, and I don't know what the outcome is because I haven't actually ever watched it, but it's going to be an interesting watch. But I don't watch Jordan Peterson for entertainment per se. I finally untangled my fucking headset completely. I don't watch Jordan Peterson for entertainment per se. However, he is a funny guy, and I love the way he puts things. And, he's a psychiatrist. And like I said, there's a video he was out there about someone asked him if he believed God, and he said that's the wrong question. He hits on so many important points there, and he actually talks about the fact that the priests being pedophiles, and if you ask the priests if they believe in God, well, the answer is going to be obviously yes. However, their actions would show that they don't believe in God, because if they believed in a God, then why would they be doing things to traumatize these little boys? Why would they know they're not allowed to have sex, yet they're going to perform whatever disgusting act they perform, and whatever you want to classify that as. I don't even want to say it out loud, but they're going to do those things, so that would show that they don't believe in God. So he believes that believing in God is he thinks it's mostly by your actions and not by your words, because anybody can just say anything. It doesn't mean they mean that. And as far as psychology goes, and even magic, if you want to take it a step further, which is basically, to me, people say hypnosis and magic are two different things, but they go hand in hand. And that's as true as I can see it. And in some senses, you can't say hypnosis is magic, because there are other types of magic you can do that aren't really hypnosis, like you're putting your sigil in your mind. I mean, in a sense, it is, because in hypnosis can be used for different things, but hypnosis could be used the same way a sigil is used, to help you quit an addiction and implant a new set of behaviors that we would call, what do you call, can't think of it. Not routine, but, something you do through repetition, which is an addiction. But the other word for addiction, habit. That fucking habit was the word I'm looking for. So you're trying to implant habits into somebody. You can remove habits, you can implant habits. So sigils, candle magic, and all that isn't hypnosis. Therefore, hypnosis can't be magic. But magic, you can use hypnosis in a magical way, in a magical meaning. So to me, hypnosis is magic, but magic is not just hypnosis. So that's the difference for me in that line of thinking, if that's how someone who is linear thinks. Well, if hypnosis is magic, well, then magic would be hypnosis, and yes and no. Hypnosis can be magic, because you can use it. You can just say that's hypnosis, or you can say that's magic. And to me, those statements are both right. But magic isn't hypnosis, because magic could be the stuff people are doing to themselves, cursing themselves, which has nothing to do with hypnosis. Magic could be what the TV is doing, putting you in a trance and inserting into your subconscious mind that this is the way you have to act. This is what subliminal programming is. NLP, analog marking, is types of magic that are closer maybe to hypnosis, because it's kind of like putting triggers in people, or not triggers per se, but like pay attention to this word, and this word is important. And it makes it stand out, and then by doing that, that's the only word that stands out, and that word has a profound effect on your mind, stuff like that. So magic encompasses more. That's why I don't like the term magic. Plus, magic also can mean, sleight of hands and illusions, which, in a manner of speaking, this could all be considered an illusion, whether it's a dream or not. But anyway, so that's why I like Jordan Peterson. But the main reason I found Jordan Peterson back then, it was by chance once again, but because he uses Carl-Jung so much. And back to shadow work. And how I went off on a rant, or I went off on something, a tangent, I guess. I started talking about about something completely different, about New Age, about the pineal gland and all that. It's all related, but how can it not be? Everything is related. But the point is, that's how I found him when I put in shadow work and Carl Jung. Because I was listening to all these New Age people, and that's the point I was trying to get at, was everybody was talking about the same thing. Ralph Smart or somebody like him would put out a video about your pineal gland. And Ralph Smart wouldn't use decalcifying your pineal gland. He would just be right, pineal gland, or how to use or how to activate your pineal gland. Something like that. Something more important, something better for you, something not harmful for you. Please stop making her scream. Please stop making her scream, okay? And then other people would change that to how to decalcify a pineal gland, thinking, reach more people. And if they had that conspiratorial end, then they can go more on a tangent. They can use the information from Ralph Smart's video about the pineal gland, and then after that go on a tangent about fucking conspiracies because it connects to that. And just use metaphors to say, well, it's just like this situation, and then compare it to that. And, whereas people might be confused or even like that in a video and think this person knows a lot about the pineal gland when he's really just relating it to something else that he actually knows about that he probably stole from somebody else in the beginning. I believe I'm good with correspondences and finding ways to relate other things. But once again, that can be misconstrued for actually knowing about the topic at hand versus, just changing a subject or not baiting the question, but dodging the question almost. But anyways, that's how I found him, because through listening to these fucking fakes in the New Age site, not know what the fuck they're talking about, not even knowing that it came from Carl Jung or anybody like that, when I actually found somebody who knew shadow work and they weren't just regurgitating, well, you need to make a love to your, Grant Morrison talked about it. I'm not calling him a fake or anything like that, but he talks about his dark side. He doesn't say shadow side, and that's okay, because that's something he said. You got to make love to your dark side. You got to fuck your dark side. You got to realize that you could kill your mom. And Jordan Peterson uses Carl Jung stuff and a few of Carl Jung's students books that he's read, and he takes it a step further, and it comes into the fact of what Birch and Frater says, and a lot of people like Max say, we don't, and Santos Bonacci, how you're not a good person if you believe in God and you do good things because you're scared to go to hell or you're scared to go to prison from the police. That doesn't make you a good person. You're a good person if you can govern yourself, meaning, you can do magic to hurt people, or if you're a big guy, you can just go around hurting people and grabbing what you want. Let's say you can do that. Let's say you've gotten away with it in the past. When you choose to not do that, not because you're scared of a hypothetical hell or a mythical hell or a mythical heaven, like a perfect retirement or the worst retirement in the history of retirements, if that's not what scares you, or a hell on earth like a prison cell, or you know what I mean, if those are the things that scare you into being good or stop you from being bad, that doesn't make you moral. That doesn't make you a good person. What makes you a good person is when you know you can do bad, when you know you can get away with it and you choose not to, when you know that we are all one, and to harm somebody else is to harm yourself, and it's to put us backwards in evolution and not let us go forward. That is it. And with the shadow work that Jordan Peterson is talking about coming from Carl Jung, this is as close as you can get to the source. If you're not willing to read the books or even try to read the books, then this is the person I learned my shadow work stuff from. This is where I took my inspiration, and this is where I did my things. Now, I read the books before, and I read the books again after. And after knowing what I know and learning what I can from Jordan Peterson, I realized that it's a lot easier to understand Jung. Now, once again, this is coming from Jordan Peterson's perspective, his frame, his paradigms, his programming, and all that. It's just like channeling. And in all honesty, this might sound weird, but you'll see him a lot of times whenever he's talking, whether it's you aren't going to see anything because you're listening to this, so it's just going to be hearing. But if you go watch his stuff on YouTube, I don't even know he has a channel. The stuff all I watch is from all these different little YouTube channels like Bite Size Philosophy, Archangel 911, a bunch of these different channels, so whatever. So I don't even know if he has his own channel. If he does, I definitely want to subscribe and like to it. But and I suggest everybody does. And like I said, you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater if he says something you don't understand or if he says something you don't agree with. Once again, I really like Jordan Peterson for multiple reasons. and he talks about things that are contrary to some of the things I talk about on here. And that's just should show you more proof of my depolarization. Like, if you don't like the things I'm putting on here and you're going to argue with me and all that, well, that's just a testament to show you that you are not depolarized. Because if you're depolarized, or at least striving to be depolarized, okay? Because I can run into people, and I just made a judgment a while ago, right? So that shows how I still need practice depolarizing, because, to know someone is a fake, and to come out here and feel the need to say to you guys that I was finding all these fake fuckers and then I found the real fucker. I mean, that's a judgment. That's a judgment I'm making, right? Because I have no way to prove if those person are fake and that they didn't come up with that information. Well, I mean, I can through dates, but maybe they pre-recorded it and then only put it out on that date. Point is, I can show my depolarization by being more humble like I am now and stating that, well, maybe they are legit and it's just my perception thinking they're not, or my ego thinking they're not legit, versus when I come on here and I just blast somebody and call people idiots and stupid like I had in my last two videos, shows how depolarized I can be with certain topics. Now, you can be really depolarized in magic, and believing magic, and to the point where any magical system you want to learn, anything magical you see on the internet intrigues you. You could be like that. But then when it comes to your children, 9/11 or any other thing, doesn't matter what, but any other real or fake construct or any other topic, I guess, or subject or experience or whatever, when those things come up, you can be depolarized. Just like me, like I just said that I think these people are fakes, just regurgitating information that they got from somebody else. And I don't believe that to be right. Yet, I also do the same thing. I got information from Frater. I regurgitated. Not only that, I put in his videos on here. And I've just only recently realized that, even though he's done similar things on his channel or whatever, played stuff, he might even have got permissions though, so I don't know. But even though they've done similar things and all that, and it is his free channel, it's not right for me to do that. It isn't right for me to do that. And for a while I just couldn't see it. That's another reason I'm thinking about going down to the 45-minute one, so I don't really have that option. I mean, you could definitely put a 15-minute clip in there and talk for 30 minutes, but it's not as easy. Whereas now I like to fill up the time with this information I want people to know. And like I said before, you're more likely to, if you're listening to my thing or you download my shit, then you only have to download one source and you're getting my opinion, my info, plus someone else's. But it's not really right, because Frater puts his information out for people to find his information. So for me to just give you his info, if I only did it once, maybe twice, it's not bad. But I've done it multiple times. Same with Birch. So that isn't right of me to do that, So luckily, I don't think either one of those guys are big enough. Now, like I said before, Birch actually liked one of my fucking videos. When I had a Facebook, I had a fucking account. I don't know if it was a group or the page, but I had links up there to my speaker site, and he liked my one that I actually have my quote-unquote script on there. It was just a list of affirmations on how to reprogram your subconscious mind, and I broke it down saying I didn't accept this one. It was this program or paradigm, or sorry, not. I didn't accept this program or this I forget how I worded it, but anyways, of scarcity, lack mindset, and I replaced it with an abundance, mindset, basically. But anyways, he liked that link to that video, or he liked that video, that speaker episode, I guess, radio episode. And I thought that was fucking cool, and then they deleted my Facebook. I recently just tried to make another Facebook account, and I had it on for a whole 2 days, and I got flagged again. So, and I didn't do anything. I didn't even fucking say anything remotely magical on there whatsoever, and it got flagged once again. All right, go. Take her shoes off before she hits the carpet. Stop. Go, and go. Put yours on the carpet. We can leave them out there, technically. Stop. Before she touches the carpet with the mud. Sorry about that, everybody. Kids are coming back in the house there, and they're playing outside in the mud and all that. But anyways, like I was saying, what the fuck was I saying again? Jesus Christ, I keep doing this. Fuck. Oh yeah. So yeah, I made another account and they flagged it within 2 fucking days. I was off. I didn't put anything magic, no links, no nothing. I didn't even write the current ceremony of witchcraft on there. I didn't even link it to my fucking Instagram page yet or anything, which would have. But I'm already in Facebook fucking. That's not even jail because they don't even release me from it. I can't even go back on. They just completely block me out of Facebook whatsoever. So I can't make a Facebook account ever from the specific phone number or with my name or, from this IP address. I think that's the things that just automatically flag it, I guess. I don't know, unless there's somebody always looking out there for me. As soon as I come on and flagged me, at first I thought it was my wife, but I checked her phone and Facebook history and stuff like that to see. And I told her I was doing it, and she was laughing. She's like, "You're not going to find anything." I'm like, "Yeah, right. It's probably you. You just don't want me to have it because of that bitch in the past that I told you guys about. Girl tried to get me in trouble for cheating on my wife and all that, which wasn't true, but, and, she didn't have anything in there, so unless she deleted it already or whatever. But point is, Birch actually liked my stuff, so there's always that slight chance that they do find my stuff. However, it's very unlikely. But the point is, if he ever does, I don't want him to not listen to me because the first episode he hears is his voice being played over the radio, and he just assumes I stole his episode. This is Frederick Xavier I'm talking about, or even Birch per se. So I don't want that to happen because, like I said, if my mentor ended up, I don't think, once again, I think Frederick is an awakened person, and I don't think he would just throw out of spite. But he'd be the first one to tell you that you got to protect your mind. You got to guard the gates of your mind, because if you just think something bad, if you are transforming yourself and using your mind to call stuff to you, and then as soon as you hear something bad, and if you think, "Oh, I wish this guy would just lose his channel," or whatever, you can send that out there. You really got to protect the gates of your mind. You really got to, and that's that whole, with great responsibility comes with great wisdom comes great responsibility, or something to that effect. But anyways, back to Jordan Peterson. This guy, I got all my shadow work, inspiration, views, and stuff from him, which he got from Carl Jung. So I decided to read the Carl Jung books, and then I can't remember the name of the book, but he said there's a student of his who made a book, and Carl Jung made the foreword for that book. I can't remember the fucking title. Hopefully I play that clip on here. But he said this, Carl Jung literally writes in that foreword that this is the book he wishes he would have wrote. So he was definitely proud of it and really liked it, because Carl Jung was very straightforward, at least from what I know and what I've learned about the man. Very straightforward, and told you what it was. Him and Freud used to work together, and they, there's various reasons why, they kind of pulled apart from each other. They disagreed on dreams. Freud thought your dreams were trying to tell you something, but there were censors, abstract. It had to come in an abstract way that could get around the censors, because there's, to me, it's kind of similar to what Freud talks about your conscious mind. Your conscious mind can block your subconscious mind from doing something. It can also block your magic from happening. If you try to do magic, whatever the magic you might be trying to do, your conscious mind can cock block it. And it can also stop the subconscious mind from getting to you, you know what I mean? It could be your ego. But anyways, he talks about that a lot on his channel. And whenever I heard that about Freud, I read a few of his books, but from Jordan Peterson said that about Freud. That's what he thought in one of the clips about Peterson on here. He thought that your dreams are trying to tell you something, I guess, but it tells it in an abstract way. Don't go down there and hide. You're staying up here. Stay in the living room. It had to do it in some abstract way to get around those censors, because those censors would shut it down if it knew what it was trying to do. Whereas Jung thinks about it in a whole different way. Jung even goes as far as saying that you're dreaming even when you're awake, that this is like a dream as well in your waking state. They're both like dreams. But anyways, so Jordan Peterson is, I'm going to put a bunch of clips of him. I put 2 random ones on the beginning that I think, and I don't think any of the clips, I haven't come by any so far, and there's one of him break down in the corner of the screen. It's a video, and he's picking apart a children's book. It's pretty funny, about a dragon that his parents don't see. And actually in the bottom, I don't know if anybody is listening to this from Canada. I know, well, certainly most of my people that listen to this are actually from Canada. At least that's what it says on my thing. But and the rest of it's from the States, and the rest are sporadic from Spain, England, one in China, one in Australia. But anyways, it's TVO, and it used to be a number 2 on the basic cable package that my parents had when I was a kid, because we didn't have satellites or cable T or your optic cables or any of that kind of special TV. When I was a kid, you only had cable or regular cable. Thanks, baby. Good job eating all your soupy. Good girl. So yeah, I remember that being TVO was channel 2, and that's what it says at the bottom of the corner of the TV of the YouTube video is TVO. So this was actually on TV, and he looks a lot different in this video. But even that one I found teaching a fucking good lesson. I haven't found a video yet of this man where you don't learn something from his videos. Now, he does have some that overlap and repeat, and I'll do my best not to play any of those. I'm going to mainly focus on shadow work and some of the deity stuff he explains very well. But he's coming from a conscious, how do I put that? A conscious part, a speculative, conscious, I guess left brain maybe way of speaking. It's very analytic. It's very precise and not full of dream or fairy tale or any magical presumptions or anything like that. He's really coming from a very teaching point of view, basically, and he breaks down scientific, if you consider learning about the brain and about psychology, being a psychiatrist, a science, which I truly, in fact, think it is. Which I completely think it is, because once again, I mean, just like you can have a doctor that's a foot doctor, a doctor that's a teeth doctor, which is normally called a dentist, or a gum doctor and an eye doctor. You can have you can have scientists that are biologists, that are chemists, that are chemistry, your anatomy, physics. Mia, go lay down. Mia, go lay down. Sorry about that. So technically, to me, a psychiatrist is someone who helps people. He is a doctor. That's why they have to go get a doctorate, and they help somebody learn about the brain. Now, they don't perform operations on the brain, but the brain is one of the organs you can't operate on. And if you've watched any Grey's Anatomy or any of those kind of fucking shows, you'll know that any surgery performed on the brain is dangerous because of the fact that if the brain swells, then you're done. As soon as the brain swells, it can't move inside of the cranium. And when the brain swells inside your head, your cranium, that creates basically death. You become a vegetable. That's what happens. And anytime you do perform a surgery or anything, like you get a cut outside, you get a bruise, there's always swelling. So when you cut the brain, any tissue really, as soon as you cut it, there's going to be swelling. So you have to reduce that amount of swelling, or you have to cut out the part of the cranium and a bigger part of the cranium where you would be performing that surgery almost so that the brain can heal without having anywhere to not have pressure in. The whole vegetable part I just said, I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but I know that there's brain damage, and you can't you don't recuperate if your brain swells and it's got nowhere to move into. So performing a surgery on a brain is very difficult, from everything from losing one of your senses, your motor skills, your smell, your eyesight, your hearing, your taste can all be affected by your brain surgery, getting a scar on your brain. That's why epileptics, having your seizures, the way to fix that is to, fuck around in the brain and all that, which is very dangerous, especially for a child who's still growing. Cut open their skull and take a piece of the skull out to perform a surgery is very fucking dangerous. For multiple reasons, not even just the one I just mentioned. But anyways, so how do you become a doctor of a brain? Well, whatever's wrong with that person's brain, if it's not a tumor on the brain, which can also be treated without doing surgery or any other fucking thing like that. But let's assume that's not the case. Let's just assume that whenever you're treating stuff that happen in the brain, such as phobias, such as fears, such as anger, such as someone who's a narcissist or a psychopath or anything like that, you're trying to help somebody with their emotions, someone who's too emotional, someone who's not emotional enough, someone who has post-traumatic stress, someone who has got ADHD, ADD, someone who's got autism, any of these things that are rooted in the brain. How would you operate on that? Well, you have to go into their brain, so to speak. And if you can't do that because it's too dangerous, or it's not a tidy science to just, if we take out this part of their brain, then he'll forget all about that. We cut that out, we're all good. Well, no, because the brain swells, the person's fucked. So what do? Well, you have to be a psychiatrist. You have to perform psychoanalysis, be a basically what Jordan Peterson is. You know, you have the person describe their dream or describe their phobia or describe their childhood. And from there, they can analyze and figure out what started the problem, where they got this problem from, and how they can fix it. And you know, this is how you do it. And basically, in my opinion, like hypnosis is magic, but magic isn't hypnosis. This study of the brain, this line of science, the psychiatry, psychologists, learning about your brain, learning about your subconscious mind, which Freud is one of the first who talked about the unconscious, and the information we know about the subconscious / the unconscious mind comes from Freud. And Peterson talks about this too. This is probably where I got it, but he talks about the fact that everybody just focuses on Freud's flaws now because we've exploited all the things he got right, and we expanded upon it. Now people are taking credit for it. Not the whole thing, hopefully not anyways, but they're taking credit for what they learned and what we know now, and they forgot all about the fact that we got it all from Freud. And so now the only thing left to focus on is the things that he said or did that didn't come true or aren't accurate, which in my opinion are probably just not accurate yet, but they eventually will be, because as things develop, as things evolve, things also stay the same, and people already know this information, but they just don't remember it, basically. But anyways, that's a little bit of a background on there about this stuff. But to me, this is a type of magic. Just like alchemy was to be a science, but that science used to be magic. Magic is the high science. It's a high art. It's both. Science can also be considered art. Just like playing a sport. Yeah, it's okay. It's phys ed. But technically, if you watch somebody who is very good at that and who can move and does it on instinct, who's not doing it analytically in their head, or you know what I mean, or learned it so well that it just flows out of them, and they don't think about it, well, that's art. That's basically an art. I know I'm not saying I'm an athletic fucking artist or anything like that, but when it comes to playing sports, any kind of sport, being outside, interacting with the children, or just other people, I can do it well. I'm very comfortable on my feet outside. I'm a very fast runner, a very quick learner when it comes to physical activity. I can make up games right off the top of my head because I have a good imagination, and I have a lot of practice applying my imagination to physical activity, meaning sports and all that. And my father, you know, when he had the time, he did play rough with me and all that. And Jordan Peterson talks about how that's very important to play rough, especially with little boys, not to hurt them, but to play with them and let them have that out and let them explore their body. It teaches them what they can do and can't do, you know. And nowadays, you know, I touch the kids in daycare and all that, which I understand 100%, you know. But the fact of the matter is that kids need that. So if you're not getting it from daycare and you're not home with your kids because, you know, you can't stay home with them because you have to work and all that, and they're not getting that, you're depriving your kid. And what you learn from Jordan and what he teaches, and I'm going to definitely play that clip now, is that it's going to be hard for your kid for the next 14 and 15 years they're going through school if they didn't have that kind of play. If before 4 years old, they're a very awkward kid who comes up to you and, you know, tries to play with you, but they always end up hurting you and doesn't know the difference between no. They haven't understood the word no. Well, then by the time they're 4, when they go out to school, they're going to be awkward like that with the other kids. The other kids are going to know it, and they're never going to include them. That's going to happen right up until they graduate high school. So, and that's how I brought this full circle back to the beginning. The first thing I started, one of the first things I started with, besides the apology for 9/11, was that I came out here to try to help. Well, I mean, I give you guys a lot of reasons why I do this fucking podcast / radio show, but one of the reasons is because I am able to perform magic. And you can say, oh, you're on EI, but I got the EI when I got fired technically from my job. And here in Canada, if you get fired, it's very hard to get EI. Most of the time, 90% of the time, you don't receive EI. And I did. And then I got EI. And then I got on a medical EI without any medical issues. And then I got back on EI. I got 3 years back to back from EI when I haven't. Because generally, you can get about a year, but you have to work and accumulate those hours to get that year, which I hadn't done in between this. So I did work for a little bit roofing and all that, but I didn't accumulate enough hours. I never made the cut. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess to say, the magic I performed showed up on the computer as I had enough hours, and I was able to get it. So say what you will, but that's the point. And I said that it's important to be home. One of the parents, normally the mother, because they have more of that maternal bond, especially if you have boys, but even little girls too need to have interaction with their father figure, because after the age of 9 months, that's when they start exploring and all that, and you need to get the word no into their head, unfortunately, and you need to play rough with them. And normally the father's better at that because the mother has those maternal instincts of, my baby's in danger, I don't want to put my baby in danger. So it's a lot harder, not impossible, but a lot harder for the mother to play rough with their kids to the point of almost hurting each other. But you draw that line, and when the kid goes too far, you don't do it from a place of anger, but you do it from a place of, that's something we don't do. You teach them that way, and they become aware of what they can and cannot do with their body, and they're comfortable in their body, instead of learning that adults are so dangerous, that adults are monsters, that they can't even be trusted to touch a little child. You know what I mean? It's pretty brutal. But I understand the fear, and I understand the necessity for not allowing this to happen. But I mean, if there's proper checks, background checks, and credentials, I mean, technically anybody can be anything. I understand that. But if we use our intuition with our information systems and our technology, I'm sure we can have people interacting with children in the proper way, at least for one small portion of the day at a daycare, in an environment that has cameras or whatever you need to do, or supervised by some people that are, okay, these people are playing with the kids today, one's supervising, make sure everything's above board, and vice versa. And I know that's a hard environment to work in, and that's why it would only be for like an hour a day, so the child isn't deprived of that, and even worse, learns the lessons that adults are so dangerous they can't be trusted to be around you. Now, having cameras and another set of adults just to watch the adults isn't much better or teaching them much, but at least, once they're playing, they may not even see that, but at least they're still getting that attention they need and that playtime they need, especially if they're going to daycare before the age of 4. After that age, it's very hard. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to reverse those effects. But before the age of 4, this should technically be necessary. It should be something that's in there, and that's what I like about Jordan Peterson. He doesn't hold any of this shit back. He even bashes universities while he's working at one. I mean, that's fucking amazing, He tells you exactly what you need to hear. And like I said, you don't have to take his opinion on, and he'll tell you whenever something is factual versus his opinion and what he believes in and all that. But, don't shoot the baby out with the bathwater. He's coming from an analytical perception. He's done a lot of research because he went to school for this. He's teaching at university. So you don't have to take everything he says as gospel. You don't have to believe in one thing, and just because you believe in that one thing, you're supposed to believe everything. That's not how this works. That's how we're trained to be, but that's not how this works. Just because someone makes a mistake or someone says something you don't agree with doesn't mean that everything they said does not have its place or work. Everything is moving us towards the greater good. There's only one way to go. People can try to tell you there's up or down, and we're going towards down, going towards up, but it's all ultimately going to the same place. And once again, that is my speculation and my belief, but that's what I believe. I took the story that Birch said that, all these different factions, from the Satanists to the Catholic Church and everybody in between, all these different spiritualities that are not aligned with people, and all the atheists and everybody are all part of the same spider. They're just different legs. And even though these legs look like they're locking in different directions, it's all part of the same main structure, the spider. And ultimately, we're just trying to all go in the same direction, but we all have different ways or different opinions of how to get there. And that's what we're arguing about, when really we shouldn't be arguing about that, when we know we all have to go the same direction. And it's futile to argue about how and pick a side, when everybody should have their own opinion on how to get there and do their own spirituality. There's nobody that should be in charge of anybody else's spirituality. There's nobody that should be in charge of, okay, well, I'll pray to God for you because you can't, because you're an idiot. There should be nobody that should be in charge of that. Everybody should be in charge of their own personal spirituality and do what they will, do their own research. That means, but that's the other part. That's the part of the coin. Some people don't have time to do it. They're focused on the career. They don't want to focus on their spirituality, and that's fine. I'm sure there's something out there for you that you can do. I mean, a simple meditation practice will probably make your business life better. Taking time to yourself and being by yourself and listening to yourself and doing focus and concentration exercises will actually help your business. Anything that helps you on the whole will help your business. But anyways, that's besides the point, and I think I'm going to end it right there for now, for today. Maybe I'll come on back on after, but for the moment, I think that is enough to go with. So I hope you enjoy, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Wait a minute, hold the phone. I didn't get onto any of the shadow work stuff I wanted to talk about. I kept getting sidetracked every fucking time. But anyways, so the reason I'm playing this, I'm going to make this brief since I already closed out. And I might come back on, like I said, if I can. But normally when I say that, it doesn't happen. So don't hold your breath. But so just before I go, once again, I apologize for the 9/11 thing, but the main reason I didn't come on is because I didn't want to keep promoting the same shit that I kept saying over and over again. And I knew if I made an episode about that I would be circling the same drain, and I didn't want to circle that same drain again of conspiracy, making a conspiracy, and how everybody's focusing on the details. And, I get pretty emotional when I talk about that. So I didn't want to make the same episode. So I'm very sorry I let everybody down that was looking for that episode. I did see a spike that day on people watching my stuff. So I felt really bad when I didn't play it, and that's why I kept rushing myself to put something out there for the people that it looked like people were coming and looking at the stuff. So, and now I've noticed a drop after, like, oh, fucking guy never even came on, and that's understandable. And yeah, so 100%. And that's why I'm going to try to put some Carl-Jung books on here as a thank you, as gratitude, and as apology. Once again, like that's what I did last time when my shit was really shitty. So I'll put a couple free books out there. I'll try to find some Freud books, and I'll do my best to add that on. Now, don't expect it right away. I always add the links as I can and later on. But anyways, so back to the shadow work. I got a lot of information from the New Age sites and quote-unquote people I thought were frauds and fakes. However, a lot of that information is kind of the same ideas and, just softened and more PG, but same kind of criteria as Peterson and Carl Jung. However, he does get into it and break it down a little more better and easier to understand and what to do. The process is better, but he doesn't ever, I'll play as many as I can about the shadow at some point, and they'll all be back to back because, it's hard to find the same stuff. It might be a little bit all over the place, but I'm telling you right now, all the stuff I'm going to put on here from him is relevant, and you should listen to it. It's up to you entirely, but you should listen to it. That's including the two first ones I played before I even started talking. However, he doesn't give you a checklist on how to do that because there's no right way to do it. Everybody is different. Everybody's going to have to experience this. But the only thing I will say, because I don't want to, I'm going to come on and talk about this in a future episode, probably my next one if I can. But I didn't want to come out here and just say the same stuff other people said or say the same stuff he's saying. I want to show people where I got this information, even though I don't think it's right to come on here and play other people's stuff. I think it is important to hear it from the source itself. And this way, when you hear my version of it, you can distinguish the difference. It's the same reason, like whenever I told you, I gave the person the birth chart, the information that I got from the website. And I was going to give her I am giving her soon, hopefully this Friday, I will be giving her a magical version of it, meaning where your strengths are going to be, when your powers are going to be, what you can do, what you can't do, what you're going to struggle with. My reading is going to be more along those lines. By looking at my chart, I can tell that by my Mercury placement, I'm going to be able to channel and get information from my subconscious through automatic writing and eventually through different types of channeling. And that's true. However, there's certain things that you develop that, and I'm going to try to include that in her reading as well. And then I'm going to explain, it's basically going to be going through the planets and where they are in there, and if there's any other significant things that have to do with doing this stuff. Take it, baby.
Well, I'm going to warm it up.
Okay, well. But anyways, so that's how my chart is going to work. And that's how oh, Jesus, I keep losing my train of thought every time the kids come in to do something. But that's how my chart works, is I'm going to break down what I believe magically can help her. I'm not going to necessarily point her to a tradition unless it's pretty obvious in her chart that, the specific tradition will go good with her. I'm also going to break down the flow, her negatives, her positives, where she has them, how that could be beneficial. I'm going to relate it to her passion, the whole Venus and Mars thing. Yes, but there's Venus and Mars is your plus and your minus, but you also got to look at your water and your air and see how those relate. And then through there, you can also come up with another passion, put those two together, and you can come up with a career, kind of thing. And that's where my reading's going to be different. But the reason I gave her the initial reading was because I could have totally just, did this free reading thing, say give out free readings, put in the information, copy and paste everything that's already on there. Boom! Copy and paste everything that's on there and pretend it's my own, add a little bit of ad-libbing and improvisation of my own or my own ideas, but generally take all the information I was already given and say it's my own. And she can go out and be like, oh, this is what Corey did, look at this, what Corey did, this is what ceremonial witchcraft witch did, and blah, 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 he did it for free. A bunch of people start doing it, I do the same thing, they think it's accurate, they think it's great, and then I start making money like that and just copy and pasting. 100% anybody can do that. Someone will fucking figure it out and it won't last long, 100%, but someone could do that. Someone could just start the part saying, I'll give in $25 readings and then do that and do it pretty fucking fast and bang a bunch out and make money, but that's not my style. So the reason I gave that to her is so she will know the difference, know that I'm not faking, knowing that mine's going to be pure on my intuition. Like I said, I told everybody how to do their own astrology reading, and that's basically doing your own chart, finding one of those sites that work, get your own chart, read what they give you and all that, but don't get stuck to that, and then put in your placements, whether it's YouTube or any other platform where people or astrologists on there explaining the different houses, the different planets and houses, the different aspects and trines and squares and sextiles and all those things. You can input that into YouTube and say, what does Jupiter and Pisces mean? And what does Jupiter, if it's in Pisces, for me, that means it's in the 12th, 11th house. But for somebody else, that might be in a different house, depending on where their ascendant line starts. My ascendant line is not far from Aries. It starts in Taurus. So my first house starts in where the second house normally is. So I'm off by one. But someone who their ascendant line is on Scorpio, like my daughter's, which is the opposite of mine, right? That means her ascendant is in Scorpio and her descendant is in Taurus, whereas my ascendant is in Taurus and my descendant is in Scorpio. So you know what I mean? But the planets can still be in the same signs. Her planets could be in the same sign as my planets, but her ascendant or descendant are different than mine. So there's so many different combinations. So that's kind of the point. I gave her the copy so I know what I tell you is not the information I just get off the internet, And I mean, you can, now that she has her chart and her chart wheel, and that's the other thing I did it for, I gave her chart wheel. So, for one, if I take too long, which I have, it's been like 3 fucking weeks, and I promised it like a week ago, which is terrible on my part. And it shows a little bit about my procrastination and my Taurus nature, how it takes me a long time to get moving, Like I said, I have a lot of negative aspects. Most of my negative aspects are Earth, which is Taurus, which is Venus. This is why I say I got more of a feminine or a negative, flow to me. Not necessarily feminine, but I am very Venusian, from the green eyes to the way I look. I used to be very involved in buying expensive clothes and making sure I look nice. Gold chains, gold rings, gold watch, the whole bit. Oakleys, I'm not even wearing them. They're on my forehead. You know what I mean? That's me. Not so much anymore after the transformation process. I'm not going to lie. When I go out, if I have time, I get ready. But as before, if I was going out, I had to get ready. And if I didn't get ready in the way I thought, or if something didn't work out, I would not go out. I got so bad to the point where I had to work out before I was going to work. I had to work out before people were either coming over, or if I was going to someone else's houses, especially if it was a pool or a beach where my shirt was off. I had to work out. I had to shave my chest, all that. And I'm glad to say that through this process, I've let all that go. I can go out now. I mean, I don't go out with brushing my teeth most of the time, because it's just that's a hygiene thing more than anything. But I have, and it's very uncomfortable for me. But I believe in making yourself uncomfortable so that you loosen up that problem, that you get into balance that way by doing the opposite of what you're comfortable with. And that's the point I'm trying to get at once again. But yeah, I used to I wouldn't go out unless specific things were all done. I wouldn't have people over unless my house was clean, because I always wanted to put off that fucking vibe that I'm a clean person. My house is always clean, and now I know that's fake. But that's the point. I gave her chart so she can see her placements and do her own readings in this way. If I come back and I'm saying the same things that everything she searched on YouTube says, then she knows I'm a fucking fraud, right? Which is one of the reasons I'm taking so long to do it. But the same way as I tell people that's what they should do, I did that in meditation and with sleep. I would take her sign, her placement, and her house and all that, and I'd focus on one a day. You have 12 houses, so I had to do that 12 times. You had to have 12 signs. So I did that once a day for the answers for her reading. I did that for every placement in her chart. And that's the conclusions I came up with. So as if I had something in a dream, which didn't happen for every sign, but it did have some profound ones for certain signs, I would write that down. And then that next day, instead of moving on to the next sign, I would focus on that. What does that mean? And as the day progressed, things would come to me, especially with my meditation and all that. So that's how I did her chart. I used my intuition, my meditation. I also used my analytical mind, my scientific mind for all these things and put it all together. And after I would get channeled messages or sleep messages or whatever you want to call them, I had both technically, then I would meditate and try to expand on those ideas with my other mind, and then I'd go into trance and try to do things in trance and some automatic writing. So it was a great and a profound experiment, and that's what I'm kind of doing when I put this out there. I put out Frater, I put out Birch, I put out one of these guys that I want to talk about their information. And I put their stuff out first, so I'm not just telling you what they say, and I'm not just saying it as my own either. I show you what the master said, what the person who thought these ideas through said, and hopefully, especially in this case when it comes to shadow work, if you've been doing shadow work or listening to a lot of New Age people for shadow work, then you're actually going to hear closer to the source. I'm not saying that he is right or he knows the most about shadow work, because that technically comes from Carl-Jung, but he quotes Carl-Jung and he studied Carl-Jung more than anybody in New Age has, because like I said, there's a lot of New Agers that just steal from other New Agers. I'm sure some of these New Age people have done actual research on Carl-Jung and came up to their own conclusions, but this guy went to school for that, paid for the program, and like we know, if you pay for something, you're more likely to go in depth and do things versus somebody who hasn't paid for a program or a book will just sit there and let the book stay there until they get around to it. But if you pay for a book or pay for a class, then you're more likely to do it. Like that car example, they put a car for free, put a for free sign on a car, everybody drives by it. But if you put a price tag on that car, people actually call to buy the fucking car. That's pretty amazing. And he gets into pretty in depth with his things, and he cites a couple experiments that were done with, I want to say, he says college and university kids. And I only looked at one of these so far to see its credibility, which I totally trust this guy, being that he's a university professor. But, you got to do your due diligence too, right? And I checked this one experiment he talks about. And they, I'm not going to give too much information about it, but they took college kids and they did a real life experiment. Now the college kids knew that this was just an experiment. And within 3 days, they had to shut down this experiment. And what it was taking half the kids and making them guards, and taking the other half kids and making them prison. And by the third day, the prison guards were so full of fake power and authority that they were literally abusing and torturing the other students in the cell. So they had to close it down, even though both the guards and the prisoners alike knew that it was a fake thing. But that's human nature. And that's a great lesson to learn about the shadow work, the shadow self, is that everybody inside them has the ability to do horrible things. And if you're the type of person that doesn't believe that and doesn't want to face that, well, what's going to happen is it's going to be forced on you. And that comes back to the thing I talked about with your children. You can chase all the bad guys away, all the devils, the demons, the dragons, all the pedophiles, all the fucking bad things that are going to happen to your kids. You can hide your kids from them. You can protect your kids from them. You can do all that, all you want. But eventually they're going to be face to face with that darkness, with that evil. And they're not going to be prepared for it. And it's the same thing. That's what happens with you. That's what your shadow side is. That's what the shadow work actually is finding a way. And there's no specific way to do this, and people can do it different ways, but it's finding a way to realize and put yourself in the position of that bad person. Now, he uses the example of being an Auschwitz guard. Auschwitz is one of the concentration camps during World War II in Germany, where people were, tortured and killed and made work until and starved and all that. The Nazi concentration camp. So pretending you're a Nazi concentration camp guard, Nazi concentration camp guard, and torturing these people and allowing the torture to keep happening. You know what I mean? That's the example he uses for many different experiments. But I think one of the main one is for getting in touch with your shadow side, your dark side, because, and once again, it comes back to that other thing. He talks about morality a lot, and a person who's a moral person, a good person, quote unquote, isn't somebody who's just being good because, back to like that bully idea, a, a straw, let's say a weak person, never mind the bully, but a weak person who says, well, I know fucking taekwondo and jujitsu and I can kill you with one hand, but I don't do it. You know what I mean? If that was true, then that would be the definition of someone who knows their dark side. That would be not the definition, but that's an example of someone who's in touch with their dark side. Someone who knows they can hurt people. Somebody knows that they have that potential, but chooses not to do it. But someone who's just a weak person and hiding behind that lie and saying, I'm not going to do that because that makes me a good person, is bullshit. They're actually a weak person who is too afraid to do those things and is hiding behind the words. Someone saying, I'm a Christian and I obey God because I want to go to heaven and I don't want to go to hell. That doesn't make them a good person. They're doing it out of fear. Fear can be a great motivator, but they're doing it out of fear of a construct of hell. Whereas that doesn't make you a moral good person. What makes you a moral good person is if you can do evil things. You've seen your dark side, you've let it out, you figured it out, and you choose to do good just because you know that that's not right. And that he also references that to the beta male in movies. The girl's best friend is a guy, and the guy's in love with the girl, but she never looks at him romantically. Yet she'll see another guy who's got a dangerous side. He's assertive, he's aggressive, but she doesn't want him to be aggressive with him. But she likes the fact that she knows that if push came to shove, he would be aggressive. That's why women pick certain men, and that's why certain men don't get picked, because if that man is just saying he can be assertive, but he doesn't actually send off a vibration or doesn't have that appeal to him. It's one of the reasons I tell my kids not to lie, because some people can tell, and other people, they just might be skeptical and all that. But sometimes people can literally tell if you're full of shit. But the point is, that woman wants a man who is not necessarily dangerous to her, but that could be dangerous, that could protect her when push comes to shove. And someone who goes around saying they're dangerous is normally someone who's just a little dog barking really loud, Please don't fight me because I can't fight. So I'm going to go around lying about the fact that I'm a good fighter. So hopefully it scares off people, basically. But anyways, I'll let him tell you about it. But I just wanted to make sure, because I kept saying shadow side and I never actually talked about it. But that's why I think Jordan Peterson is important. And he's got many philosophies about many things. He's definitely worth checking out almost all his videos. I know I have, or I think I have anyways. But yeah, so the shadow side stuff is the most important part of what I want. For me, what was most important for me was his ideas, his views, his opinions, and his interpretation of Carl Jung's shadow work and his description. Because like I said, he even says it, Carl Jung is very hard to understand, especially if you're coming from New Age, light and fucking, fairy shit. Everything's all love and light, and then you start reading Carl Jung, who's kind of a realist, but he does, it's very hard to explain. But anyways, he was a good segue into that. And then the book he recommended in one of these clips, I read that one, and that was really, it was cool seeing Carl Jung's forward, but it was really, really good. So anyways, I hope you enjoy. And yeah, any questions, where to email or call or text. Have a good day.
Piaget was very interested in how you produce structures that enable you to regulate yourself, because you're like a kind of a colony of strange sub-animals that have to figure out how to get along so that you can sort of be one thing. You kind of learn that, I would say, between the ages of 2 and 4 as you're being socialized. You know how erratic 2-year-olds are. I mean, they're a blast, and it's part because they're erratic. It's like they're unbelievably happy, and then they're unbelievably hungry, and then they're really hot, and then they're really upset and crying, and then they're really scared. It's like, and all of that's just untrammeled, and so it's really fun to be around them, especially when they're happy, because they're so happy that it's just, you don't ever get to be that happy. And so it's nice to be around a 2-year-old because you can kind of feel that again, And one of the horrible things about being a parent is that you spend a tremendous amount of your time making your child less happy. And the reason for that is that positive emotion is very impulsive, because everybody says, well, you should be happy. It's like, well, no. When you're happy, you're actually quite stupid. And so because happiness makes you impulsive, happiness says, hey, things are really good right now, get what you can while the getting's good. And so if you're hyper-optimistic, manic, we'll say, it's like every stock investment looks like a really good stock investment. It's like you won't spend all your money because look, there's those wonderful things everywhere and you can do such great things with them. And then, you spend all your money and then you crash and you think, oh God, my life's over, because I just spent all my money on all this useless stuff. And it's all under the grip of impulsive positive emotion, and so when you're telling your kids to be quiet and settle down, it isn't because they're making a lot of noise being in pain. It's because they're running around like wild baboons having a blast and disrupting things like mad, And so, you got kids, you got to settle down, quit having so much fun. And it's kind of awful that you do that, but you do. And that's because the emotions and the motivations have to be brought into like a relationship with one another within the person, so that one thing I remember with my son, he's quite disagreeable by temperament, which is actually a good thing as far as I'm concerned, although it brings its own challenges. And so with my daughter, when she was misbehaving, she was pretty agreeable, and if she was misbehaving, I could basically just look at her and then she'd quit, But my son, it was like, that was just nothing. You're looking at me, it's like, no, that's just not going to go anywhere, man. And so then I'd tell him to stop, and that really wasn't having much of an effect either. He just sort of maybe laugh or run away or whatever. I mean, he was a tough little rat. And, what I would do with him is he would be doing something and I'd interfere and he'd get upset and, angry. And so then I'd get him to sit on the steps, and I told him, this is when he was about 2, I said, look, you're going to sit on the steps. That's time out. You're going to sit on the steps until you've got control of yourself and you can come back and play the family game again. I basically said, be a civilized human being, and then you're welcome again. So he'd sit on the steps. It was so interesting to watch because he was just enraged. He'd sit there. Like, have you ever seen a 2-year-old have a temper tantrum? It's really quite the bloody phenomenon. If you ever saw an adult do that, you'd call 911 right away. It's like, oh my God! And I've seen adults do that, because people say with borderline personality disorder will have temper tantrums, and it's like, man, you want to be about 30 feet away from that person, that's for sure. It's really, but in kids, it's like, well, first of all, they're only this long, there's not much trouble because they really pause, but it's like, they're just completely gone. They're like, on the floor, their face is red, they're just furious, like way more furious than you ever get if you're even vaguely socialized. They're just outraged, and they're kicking and hitting the ground, and it's like a little epileptic fit of anger, They're completely controlled by their rage, and we took care of one kid for a while. He was actually a pushover. That kid behaved by, kind of shaking your finger at him, but his mother thought he was really tough, because he had her figured out. And one of the things he would do is have a temper tantrum, and during the temper tantrum, he would hold his bloody breath until he turned blue. It's like, try that. That's your homework. Go home and have a temper tantrum, and while you're doing it, hold your breath until you actually turn blue. It's like, you won't be able to do it. You don't have the willpower of a 2-year-old. That's for sure. That little varmint man would just have a fit, and he'd hold his breath, and then he'd turn blue. It was like, wow, that's amazing. And we would just let him do it. And, he'd turn blue, and everybody would be gone, and he'd come out of it, and it didn't work. So he just quit doing it. I think he did it twice, and he figured out, oh well, that's a lot of work for very little outcome. It's not like 2-year-olds are stupid. They're not stupid. They're probably smarter than you, but they're not civilized by any stretch of the imagination. And so anyways, back to my son, I put him on the steps, and he'd be like, just enraged, and trying to get himself together, and I'd wait I got a strict rule, which was, as soon as you're done, you're welcome again. So it's completely under your control. You get yourself calmed down, you come and talk to me again. If you're calm enough so I like you, then you're welcome back in the family. No grudge, nothing. And so it's harder than you think. Like, people think they like their kids. So don't be thinking that. They're hard to like. They're little monsters, and they're very, very pushy and provocative. And so lots of parents do not like their children, and they do terrible things to them their whole life. So it's no joke, and it's very common. That was Freud's observation, fundamental observation, that a lot of psychopathology is rooted in the family, and you can be sure of that. When you hear about some mother who's done something terrible to her child, which happens reasonably frequently, you know perfectly well that she has a very terrible capacity to discipline. The child's just provoked her and provoked her and provoked her and provoked her and provoked her. And it just happens to be a day where her new boyfriend left and she's quite hungover and she got fired. And it's like, that's the wrong day to provoke her. And then she does something that is not good. And you read about it and you think, well, how could that happen? How could anyone do that? Well, that's how they do it. So, and kids are very provocative, just like little chimps. The adolescents will like throw little pebbles and sticks at the sleeping larger males and bung them. And that teasing, which it is, that teasing turns into full-fledged dominance challenge behavior once the adolescent males get big enough to do it. And so when you're being provoked by a child, which they provoke you all the time, you're trying to figure out, well, just where are you exactly? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? And how else are they going to figure it out? Anyways, he'd sit on the steps and he's just enraged and trying to control himself. And I'd watch that, and then I'd come back after about 2 minutes or whatever, and he'd still be, I'd say, well, have you got yourself under control? Are you ready to get off the steps? He'd go, no, not yet! And then, he'd get himself under control, and then he'd come back, and, he'd be contrite, and then I would like him right away, You got to watch that, because you don't like being dominated by a 2-year-old. No one does. And so if the child hasn't mastered himself and started to act in accordance with the prevailing social norms, you won't like them. Well, oh yeah, I will, because, I'm a good person. It's like, no, you won't. And no, you're not a good person, so don't be thinking about that at all. It's just not true. So when he was contrite, then he'd come and then, he'd just go on like nothing had happened. Because that's what you want to do, right? As soon as you get compliance, especially if the compliance is in the best interest of the child, you want to reward it instantly, right? That's the right thing to do. Because so then, and you could just see him gaining control over himself. And so really what was happening is, in his mind, in his brain, we'll say, there was a war between the psyche, the ego that was starting to become integrated, and starting to become a continuous person, an identity. And it's fragile in 2-year-olds, and it can be disrupted all the time, and it is. That's why they're so hyper-emotional. It's fragile, that little ego, and it doesn't have a lot of power. And so what you want to do is reward it when it wins. It's when he gets control of the underlying motivations, you want to say, hey, good work, man, good work, kid. You did it. You got yourself under control. Way to be. And the kid's really happy about that because it's actually not that much fun to have a temper tantrum. It's exhausting. It takes you over. Carl Jung talked about this phenomenon. He described as retrogressive restoration of the persona. And so it's a complicated idea, but basically what it means is that sometimes you take a leap forward and you learn some things, but you can't catalyze a new identity, so you try to go back and hide in your old identity. And that actually doesn't work because, well, things have changed and you've learned something and that isn't who you are anymore. And so it's like you have to cut parts of yourself off in a destructive manner to fit back into the person that you were. Now what happens here is that Pinocchio escapes from this tyrannical situation and undergoes this descent into chaos, but he tries to go back home. He tries to go back to what he was. And he can't do that anymore. His father isn't at home anymore. And so when he goes home, he finds that there's no home there. Now, this happens to people sometimes, and it's often a shock to them. So one of the things I've noticed about Peter Pan type, I'm going to speak about men here because I've observed it more in men, is that they'll often stay under the thumb of their father. And you think, well, why would someone do that? Because it means they're subject to the tyrannical judgment of their father. They're always concerned about what their father would think or whether their father approves of them, and so forth. And you think, well, that's got to be an unpleasant place to be. Why would you do that? One of the things that I've suggested to my clients and to other people sometimes is that here's a weird little exercise that you can undertake, a little thought experiment. So you have your parents, and of course your parents have friends who are about their age, and maybe some of them are people you only know peripherally. And I might ask you, well, do you care more about what your parents think than you care about what these peripheral people who know your parents think? And then the answer to that is, well, of course. And then the question that arises out of that is, why? I mean, for someone else, your parents are the peripheral people, and their parents are central. Like, why is it logical that your parents' opinion makes any more difference to you than the opinion of some randomly selected people who are approximately that age? Why is it the case that you would consider that they would know more than someone else? I mean, I know they know you better, and fair enough, but that's not the point. And then another point there is that to the degree that your parents' opinion about you matters more than some randomly selected people of approximately the same age, Jung would say, well, you haven't exactly separated out the God image from your parents, and so you're still under that combination. It's a complicated thing to talk about, but think about the Harry Potter series. Harry has two sets of parents, right? He's got the Dursley parents, and then he's got these magical parents that sort of float behind, and he should know the difference between them. They shouldn't be one and the same. They're not for him. And it's like, well, you have your parents and you have nature and culture as parents, and you shouldn't be thinking that your parents are nature and culture as well. You shouldn't have final dominion over you. It means that you're not an individual yet, if that's the case. Freud said, for example, that no one could be a man unless his father had died. And Jung said, yes, but that death can take place symbolically. Okay, so there's that part of the idea. And then another part of the idea is, one of the times in your life when you actually realize that you're an individual is when you'll go and ask your parents something and you'll realize they actually don't know any more about what you should do than you do. And that sucks. And that's partly why people are often willing to maintain a tyrant-slave relationship with their father. It's like, on the one hand, you have to be inferior in a relationship like that. You know, you've always got the judge watching you. But on the other hand, there's always someone who knows what to do. There's always someone standing between you and the unknown that you can go ask, what should I do? Well, at some point, you'll realize that the reason you can't ask that anymore is because they actually don't know any more than you do. And then that's a pain. Like that is a symbolic death. That's also when you establish a more individual relationship with your parents. It's at that point that you could conceivably start taking care of them instead of the reverse. And that's a time that should come. But you have to let that image of perfection go. And that exposes you. Well, that's what happens here. You know, Pinocchio goes home, and he wants things to be the way they were, and he wants to stay under the careful care of the benevolent father, but that's no longer possible. He's past that point, and that's why the father has disappeared. And so Geppetto has gone off to look for Pinocchio because he also needs his son, but in any case, the house is abandoned. And so then we see inside the house that everything's covered with cobwebs and everything's gone, and Pinocchio and the crickets sit on the steps and they're very concerned. First of all, they wonder where he went, so they're actually concerned that he's gone, but they also don't know what to do because there's just no going home. And so, you know, that's also the case that once you hit a certain point in your development, well, it's the same thing we already talked about. The answers that you're looking for are not going to be found in your parents' house. It's as simple as that. Now, you could artificially maintain your dependency, but, you know, if you do that for too long, things get pretty ugly. So you get pretty stale and You know, you're like bread that's been on the shelf for too long. Okay, so now I have played with kids that haven't had any rough and tumble play. And it's really hard to play with them, partly because they're easily frightened. You know, they'd like to play. I know how to play with kids. They'd like to play. They're pretty pepped up on it, you know, and they're really excited, especially about physical play. But they're awkward, you know, so you play with them, they stick their thumb in your eye, or, you know, or they cry really easily when nothing really happens, and, like, they just don't have it together. A kid that has done a lot of physical interaction, physical play, that kid, it's a different sort of kid, because the first thing the kid knows, it's not a rule, the first thing the kid knows is how forceful can he be with you so that it's exciting and interesting and fun, but it's not too much. And that's really an interesting question, because actually, to really play a good game, like a physical contact game, like wrestling with a kid, is that you want to let that kid come right up to the edge of hurting you. And the closer the kid gets to the edge, the more fun it is for both. The kid will give you a whack and go, you know, and it's good, you know, and then maybe he'll give you a harder whack to see if he can get away with it. And kids will often, they'll come up to you, whack you, and then run away, and then they'll look, and if you're laughing, then they'll come back and try a harder one, and then, you know, they're doing it incrementally, because it's exploratory behavior, and part of the exploration is, okay, what are bodies like? And the answer to that is, well, what can you get away with doing to them? But it's a more sophisticated answer, too, which is, what can you get away with doing to them in a way that allows you to continue to explore without fear or punishment and without blowing the whole game to bits? Okay, so how do you figure that out? You do not talk about it, because you can't. You have to act it out. It's like, so the kid's hitting you and wrestling and pulling your hair and doing all these things, and you're modifying its behavior very, very carefully and in minuscule detail. And then you get a kid who can, like, wrestle like mad, and they're fun to play with. They bounce around like a dog that won't bite you, you know. A good, well-trained dog you can really play with, and you can play with them rough. And it's a blast. The dog has a good time. The person has a good time. It's like, excellent. That's a socialized dog. So, the other thing that kids learns, which is quite cool, is what hurts them and what doesn't, and how afraid can they be and still have fun. So, you know, when you're wrestling with a kid, you put them face down, you put your elbow on them, you bend them around, you throw them in the air and catch them, you know, you grab them by the leg and maybe you pull them over, and, you know, and what you're showing the kid is, here's a bunch of things that your body can do, and it's okay that they're being done. That it isn't going to hurt you, and you're not talking about it, you're showing them. And so the kid gets kind of confident about what he or she can withstand physically. And the difference between pain and not pain, and the difference between fear and not fear, and when something's threatening and when it's not. It's very sophisticated. It's very sophisticated behavior. And that's partly why kids love to play. Now, one of the things that's happened, which is, you know, an indication of a deep sickness in our society, is that I used to work at a daycare center, right, when I was about your age, because I really like kids. And they like to play with me because I know how to play with them. And so one of the things I would do with the little kids was I would draw them horrible monsters, like big teeth things, or I just sketched them up. They weren't any work of art. Those damn kids, they would line up and get a picture of a monster. Draw me a picture of a monster. Draw me a picture of a monster. It's like, they love those little pictures of monsters. So that was pretty funny. Another thing I would do is play with them. I'd take them out in the yard and grab an arm and a leg and spin them around or bend them over and, you know, twist them around, let them crawl on me. And there was always one kid in the group who couldn't do that, though. He's like, he hadn't been paid attention to enough. So he was, I think he's like a Taoist uncarved figure, very vague and ill-defined and clunky. And so a kid like that, you know, you sit down, it's so sad. You sit down and you're interacting with the kids, and that kid comes along, sort of lumping along, you know, like this, and they plop on your lap, and they're about as sophisticated as like a 6-month-old, you know, and they're quite annoying. You know, which is a horrible thing because they're so desperate for attention, and it's too late often by the time they're 4. It's like, good luck fixing that, man. It's not going to happen. You know, and those kids are just screwed because what happens to them is they're so lumpy and ill-formed and uncomfortable in their body and socially clueless and inattentive and blind and ignored and resentful that no other kids will play with them. And it's no wonder, because the other kids are way the hell up on the play development trend, and so they're bored stiff by them. It's like playing with a 9-month-old, which kids will do, you know, but that's not peer play. And so those kids just drift off. They stay on the outside of the peer group, and they never get into it. They never get into it. So, very, very ugly. And so now in daycare centers, you can't touch the kids. It's like, what the hell? You know, well, why? Well, because you can't distinguish play from molesting. It's like, who can't distinguish that? You know, and what are you going to do? You're going to deprive the kids of play because of your stupid paranoia. That's the whole process, right? Brilliant. Brilliant. You know, what you're doing is you're teaching children that adults are so dangerous that they can't be trusted to be near you. That's a lovely thing to teach children, especially because they're going to be adults.
How do you learn a subject or skill in half the time? Let's do this together. I want you to right now think of a subject or skill that you just want to learn fast. You want to learn it rapidly at an accelerated rate. You want to learn faster so you can achieve faster. I want you to remember 4 letters. F-A-S-T. F-A-S-T. Fast. And the F stands for forget. You're like, Jim, you're this world-class memory expert. You're this coach to all these celebrities and CEOs. Why are you starting with forgetting? You want to forget what you already know about the subject so you can learn something brand new. Often a lot of people don't learn faster because they feel like their cup is full and they feel like they know it already. So always remember to start with the beginner.
Extra life.
Nah, I got a dentist.
This is a story that the ancient Egyptians predicated their society on. And to understand this story, the first thing you have to know is what the characters were. And these characters were gods. There's 4 of them. Although the Egyptians had far more than 4. These as the central gods. And you might think, what is a central god? And then you might think, well, imagine that the gods compete for dominance across time in people's imaginations. And some gods win. And they occupy the primary position of dominance in the hierarchy, in the dominance hierarchy of gods. And those are ideals. And ideals compete across time for dominance. And they're embodied. And so when diverse tribal people come together, they throw all their gods into the ring and they fight across time, and something emerges as a victory. And that's the emergence of monotheism out of polytheism. And of a unified morality within each of us as we develop across time. And the God that emerges as dominant across time bears a substantial resemblance. Imagine you have a set of gods in this locale that are competing across time, and something emerges as dominant. And then over here you have another set of gods that compete across time for dominance, and something emerges. You'll see major commonalities across the 2 things that emerge. And the reason for that is because the process of emergence that gives rise to both of them is similar in both situations. And that's part of what accounts for the cross-cultural similarity of high-order religious ideas. All right, anyways, you need to know the characters. Osiris. Osiris is the old king. He's Dumbledore for all intents and purposes. He's the old king. He's the spirit that established the Egyptian state when he was young. He was a great hero, but now he's old. And he's archaic and he's willfully blind. That's Osiris. He has a brother, Seth. Seth is Set. And Set is Satan, because the word Satan comes from the word Seth and Set via the Coptic Christians. So he's a precursor to the Western idea of Satan. You have Isis. Isis is queen of the underworld, and Isis was the goddess of a religious structure that prevailed across thousands and thousands of years. Isis. And you have Horus. Horus is a falcon, and the Egyptian eye. Everyone knows that eye, right? The eye with the open pupil. That's Horus. And Horus is a falcon because falcons can see way better. They can see better than us. They can see better than anything else except for perhaps eagles. And they fly above everything. Zazu in Lion King is Horus, right? And Mufasa is Osiris, and Scar is Seth. And there's no specific representation of Isis, but the closest there is in that story is probably the Queen of the Hyenas that's played by, who's the actress? Yes, Whoopi Goldberg. That's right. Because she's like the queen of the underworld, right? She's the queen of the hyenas that live out among the dead. But, okay, anyways. Seth, Osiris, Seth, Isis, and Horus. Here's how the story goes. Osiris is a great king. He established the Egyptian state. You could think about him as the embodiment of Egyptian custom and tradition. You could think about him as the thing that the pyramid represents, all right? But he was great when he was young, but he's not young anymore. He's old, and he's willfully blind. And what that means is that he doesn't see what he could see. He refuses to see what he could see. Why is Osiris old and willfully blind? Because that's what culture is. It's a paternal spirit that's old and willfully blind, and it's always that way, always that way. And the reason for that is because it's a construction of the dead. The dead aren't alive. They can't, so they're out of date, and they can't update themselves anymore. And you inhabit their corpse. And that's actually what happens in an earlier story that I'll tell you next week. The early Mesopotamian gods inhabited the corpse of their father, roughly speaking. Anyway, so Osiris was great and when he was young, but he isn't young anymore. He's old, and he's willfully blind. He won't look where he knows he should look. He doesn't have the energy, or maybe he doesn't have the spirit. His brother Seth is not a good guy, and Osiris knows it, but he underestimates his malevolence and power, and so Seth wants to rule the kingdom. So what does that mean? It's easy. Every stable society is threatened by willful blindness and malevolence, always. Every bureaucracy has that proclivity to stagnate and to become blind. That's why corporations die all the time. That's why a Fortune 500 company only lasts 30 years. It's why we have to have elections. It's to stop the dead from staying in control for too long. Osiris turns a blind eye to Seth. Seth is happy about it. The same thing happens in the Lion King, roughly speaking. Seth one day waits for Osiris to make a mistake and to be weak, and he attacks him and he chops him up into pieces. And he distributes the pieces across the entire Egyptian state. In fact, the Egyptians regarded their provinces as pieces of Osiris's body. Okay, so now you can't kill Osiris because he's a god. And why is he God? A god because he represents the spirit of structure. And there's always structure. It can't be destroyed. It always reconstitutes itself. It can be hurt and broken into pieces, which is exactly what happens to Osiris. Things fall apart. Why? Because they get old and because malevolence undermines them. That's what the Egyptians were trying to sort out. Okay, so Seth distributes his Osiris all over Egypt, so he can't get himself back together, right? Things fall apart, and they can't be brought back together. But the spirit of Osiris still lives in the pieces. So what happens? Order is demolished. What would you expect? Chaos emerges. That's Isis. Isis is queen of the underworld. She's Osiris's wife. Order and chaos, just like the yin and the yang. Order collapses, up comes the queen of the underworld. She's looking for order. Chaos cries out for order. She's looking for order. She goes all around Egypt trying to put Osiris back together. It's a state of chaos. She finds this phallus. She makes herself pregnant with it. And what does that mean? Well, it means it's like Geppetto in the belly of the whale. That thing has the potential to reemerge. The thing that collapses into its pieces is still alive. It can unite with the chaos and produce something new. That's the story of the dissolution of structure into chaos and then its revivification. Isis makes herself pregnant. She goes back down to the underworld. She gives birth to Horus. Horus is the Egyptian eye. He's the son of the great father and the great mother. He's a messianic figure. And in fact, much of the mythology that described Horus was extracted without much modification and then attributed to Christ. Very much, and you can read about the parallels. You can read about it online if you want. There's any number of parallels. And of course, there is the mythology that the Jews came out of Egypt, and of course the Christians emerged from the Jews, and so there was a tremendous influence of Egyptian thinking on the development of these later ideas. And you see pictures of Isis with Horus on her lap that are virtually identical in content and form to the later pictures of Mary with the infant Christ. And that's the holy mother of God in the hero. It's not a Christian motif. It's far deeper than a Christian motif. It's a human motif. So this queen of the underworld gives birth to Horus, and Horus grows up outside the kingdom. Why? In the underworld. Because that's what human beings do. You're alienated from your culture. Always. Why? It's old and dead and corrupt. And so that leaves you growing up in chaos, what would you call, alienated from your fundamental culture. That's the story of adolescence. Horus grows up. He can see. That's what differentiates him from Osiris. That's why he's a falcon. He goes and has a fight with Seth. And now the difference between Osiris and Horus is that Horus does not underestimate Seth. He knows exactly what he's up against. He goes and has a terrible battle with him, trying to get his kingdom back. Something else that's echoed in the Lion King story. And while Horus and Osiris, or Seth are fighting, Seth tears out one of his eyes. Now, why? Because Seth is the embodiment of destruction and malevolence. And no matter how conscious you are, if you encounter that, even voluntarily, the probability that it's going to damage your consciousness is extraordinarily high. That's why people don't do it. So the eye is torn out, but Seth is defeated, and Horus banishes him to the nether regions of the kingdom. You can't kill him. Why? Because the malevolent, destructive force that threatens states never dies. It's always there. You can only remove it temporarily. Now Horus is king, Pharaoh, king, God. He's got his eye, and so you think, well, he's going to just pop that back in his head, and then he's going to be able to lead. He's going to be able to take his place at the uppermost pantheon of gods properly. But that isn't what he does. He takes his eye, and he goes back to the underworld, just like Pinocchio going into the depths to rescue Geppetto. And down there is the spirit of Osiris, who's extant as a kind of half-dead ghost.
Whereabouts?
And it gives Osiris his eye. Now Osiris can see.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
You go down into the chaotic,
So what,
when threatened by malevolence, even to the point of damage to your consciousness. You go down into the chaos and you find the dead spirit of your tradition and you give it vision. And so, provided with vision, Osiris regenerates, and then Osiris and Horus go back up to the world, linked together and rule jointly. And the Egyptians believed that the Pharaoh, who had an immortal spirit, was the embodiment of the conjunction of Horus and Osiris. And that's what gave him sovereignty. And so you think about how brilliant that is. The Egyptians are trying to puzzle out who should lead, who should be Pharaoh, and what do you have to be if you're going to be Pharaoh in order for things to work. You have to be awake to malevolence and chaos, and you have to embody your tradition. And that puts you at the highest pinnacle of the dominant structure. And that's the same as, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as the battle between the gods across centuries or eons and the emergence of the highest possible moral virtue as a consequence of that competition. It's the eye on the top of the pyramid, right? It's, in the Washington Monument, there's a cap on the Washington Monument. The top of the Washington Monument is a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid is a cap. It's made out of aluminum. And the reason it's made out of aluminum is because when they made the Washington Monument, it was the most valuable metal known. And so what does it mean? It means there's a pyramid, and there's something at the top of it. But the thing that's at the top of the pyramid isn't the same as the rest of the pyramid. That's the thing. The pyramid exists. There's a dominance hierarchy. Something climbs up to the top, but it's not just at the top of one pyramid. It's at the top of all of them. The thing that rises to the top of any given pyramid is the same thing that can dominate all pyramids. It isn't good enough to be the best at a dominance hierarchy. What you want to be is the best at the set of all possible dominance hierarchies. Right. And that's the thing that's gold at the top of the pyramid, and that's the eye. That's what the Egyptians figured out. And what does that mean? It means the thing that puts you at the top is attention. Pay attention. Keep your eyes open. It's not the same as thinking. It's not the same thing. It's like watching. And the thing about human beings is we can see. We can see better than any other creature except birds of prey. And so our capacity to see is, in fact, what we use in the world. Our brains are actually organized around vision, unlike most animals. Their brains are organized around smell, not us. We can see. We stand upright so we can see a long distance. And in our ability to see is what saves us and what saves our communities. And that's what these stories are trying to portray. And you might say, well, why didn't people just say so? And the answer to that is because they didn't know. It took a long time to figure it out. Forever. It's taken forever to figure it out. It's part of what I hoped when I wrote this.
It's your first time in a war zone? Yeah.
To help me out with. Basically, in a recent interview, you talked about how myth is meant to reconcile inherent contradictions in reality, right? But I'm sort of stuck between two mythological or psychoanalytic ideas that I think are both really important, but they seem to have a inherent contradiction within them that I've been trying to figure out. So on one hand, you have this idea that there's times in your life where you have to identify things in yourself that are insufficient, or there's a problem somehow that you have to kind of have a controlled burn or like a phoenix-like transformation where you discard part of yourself that doesn't fit or is not working. But then on the other hand, you have talked about this Jungian idea where as you become really, when you get older, you mature by reincorporating things about yourself that you lost when you were younger, or that, you know, you're trying to integrate your shadow, or you're trying to find parts of your personality that maybe you've been rejecting and try and figure out how to bring them into the fold or into the whole. So he's got this quote that I really like, which is, "I'd rather be whole than good."
Right.
So on one hand, you may identify something as a problem and you want to get rid of it or burn it off. But then on the other hand, it seems like the path to being stronger is to figure out how to put everything together.
So there's one of the things Jung wrote about in his works on alchemy was an explanation of the prime alchemical dictum, which was solve coagula, which meant dissolve and integrate. Right. So imagine this. Imagine you had a fairly hostile father who is not very well controlled in his aggression. Decent person other than that, but let's say that. And so your reaction is, I'm never going to be aggressive. And so you've built a moral structure that's part of your personality. And there's possibility floating around outside of that you've denied any ethical, you've stripped the idea of aggression of any ethical utility whatsoever. Okay, so what happens? This burns off, and then that comes back up. Now you still have to integrate it. So it's associated in some sense with Nietzsche's ideas, morality as cowardice. Because one of Nietzsche's most trenchant critiques of traditional morality, let's say, is that most of what passes for morality isn't morality. It's just cowardice. It's not that I'm a good person and I don't hurt you. It's that I'm afraid to hurt you. And because I don't want to admit that I'm afraid to hurt you, then I say I'm moral, because then I can mask my essential fear and cowardice in a guise of morality. And that happens far more often than you would think, because harmless and moral are by no means the same thing. So some of what you're burning off, you can see, this is where Freud was such a genius, I think, is because he concentrated on aggression and sexuality, which are perhaps the two most difficult parts of a personality to integrate. Said that the hyper-simplified morality stops you from tapping into deeper recesses of your psyche. And it's partly because they're primal forces. It's not surprising that you don't want to have anything to do with them, that you stay away from situations where they might make themselves manifest. But the problem is, by denying the worst in yourself in that manner, or suppressing it, you preclude the possibility of the best. Because no one can be a good person without integrating their capacity for aggression. Because without that capacity for aggression, you cannot say no. Because no means, if you really say it, no means there isn't anything that you can do to me that will make me change my mind. Or conversely, it means I will play for higher stakes than you will. And unless you've got your aggression integrated, there isn't a chance you can say that. And if you did, no one would take you seriously, because they'd know it was just a show. So one of the most useful things that Jung did, I think, was to work on this idea of the integration of the shadow, because he was really interested in the idea of evil, right? Especially working with trying to parcel out what happened in Nazi Germany and during the Second World War. What do you do with the part of you that's aggressive and potentially malevolent? Do you just crush it? That's the superego response in some sense. Do you just put it behind you, so to speak? Is that a possibility? Or do you admit to its existence and bring it into the game? And that's, see, for Freud, in some sense, morality was superego clamping down on the id. And they were fundamentally opposed. Both Jung and Piaget had a different idea, and I think they were right. It's like, no, you invite the bad guys out to play. And so you're an aggressive hockey player. But it's disciplined aggression. That gives you access to a whole sorts of energy you wouldn't otherwise have. And then with regards to sexuality, it's like, well, untrammeled promiscuity doesn't constitute a virtue, but neither does unavoidable virginity, right? In fact, I think that's worse, because it also masks itself with virtue. It's like, well, you should be able to do things that you wouldn't do. That's like the definition of a genuinely moral person. They could do it. They don't. And that's not cowardice. And so you burn off the things that get in the way of that integration.
So when you say dissolve and integrate, might be a good way to sort of bring the two ideas together, that the burning off and the difficult process is necessary because the elements of yourself are structured together in a rigid way that is not working properly.
Yeah, that's what happens to Geppetto in the belly of the whale. He's so caught in his presuppositions that he can't escape, right? And so Pinocchio represents the new force. So it's very interesting. So when you watch Pinocchio try to rescue him, the first thing Geppetto does is confuse Pinocchio with a fish, because he wants something to eat. But Pinocchio is better than something to eat because he can rescue him so he doesn't need to eat. And then Pinocchio wants to make a fire, and Geppetto objects because he's going to burn up all the furniture. It's like, we don't need the damn furniture if we're getting out of the whale. You know? So Geppetto, and he's old, so that's the rigid structure. That's the old year that has to die off before the new year can be born. It's a forest fire that allows for new growth, and that's how those things are put together. And it's useful to know too, because if you burn something off, you might think, well, there's nothing left. It's like, that's not true. If it's dead wood, then you have room for new growth. And you want to be doing that on a fairly regular basis. That's the snake that sheds its skin and transforms itself, right? That's the death and resurrection from a psychological perspective. It's exactly the same idea. Now, we don't know the upper limit to that, right? Because we don't know what a person would be like if they let everything that they could let go, and only let in what was seemly, let's say. But you can see that. It's funny. We don't know that to some degree. You can see people start to do that. So that's not a rare experience. People improve very rapidly. They can improve their lives very rapidly. A lot of it's low-hanging fruit. Like, if you just stop doing really stupid things that you know are stupid, your life improves a lot. So, and it frees you up. It also means there's an element there that's also associated with pride. Because people tend to take pride in who they are, and that's a bad idea, because that stops you from becoming who you could be. Because if you're proud of who you are, you won't let that go when it's necessary. You won't step away from it. And then you end up being your own parody something like that. That's also a very bad idea. You want to be continually stepping away from your previous self. And so, and I guess part of that too is that you have to decide, are you order? Are you chaos? Or are you the process that mediates between them? And if you're the process that mediates between them, you are the thing that transforms. And that's the right attitude for a human being, because that's what we are. We're the thing that voluntarily confronts chaos and transforms. That's what we are. And so for better or worse, that's our deepest biological essence, you might say. And so you can let things go if you know that there's more growth to come. So, can you talk about your own specific experiences / methods used with integrating the shadow? Yeah, well, I can actually. I think a tremendous amount of what you might regard as shadow integration, which in the parlance of behavioral psychologists would be something like assertiveness training, right? It's training in how to stand up for yourself and for your, let's say, for your better self, which would be the self that you can use productively over a medium to long period of time that would be of use to you, but also of use to people around you. So it's a self that's bounded by the necessity of taking care of yourself, but also simultaneously taking care of the people around you. I think that the simplest way to start that work is to consult your resentment. It's easy to become bitter about life and to become angry because, of course, life is difficult and it's full of disappointments. And people are also subject to betrayal on the part of themselves and on the part of people that hypothetically care for them. And so it's easy to get bitter and to be resentful. And resentment is a very useful emotion, even though I think it's one of the most damaging emotions if it's not dealt with properly. So if you're resentful, basically means only one of two things. It either means you should grow up and quit whining and get on with your life, or it means that you're being subject to tyrannical forces of one form or another, maybe emanating from you, maybe a consequence of the natural environment, maybe a consequence of society. You're being subject to tyrannical forces and you're not putting your own best interests forward, like in that broader sense that I described. I don't mean your selfish, narrow interests that only serve the purposes of instantaneous gratification. I mean your own best interests in terms of developing your character over the span of your life. If you're resentful, it either means that you're immature and that you should grow the hell up. And so you need to figure out how much of your resentment is that, and maybe allied with the desire to find other things or people to blame. But the other possible option is that you have something to say or do, right? Because you're in a situation where you're violating your own internal ethical standards and you're being required, pressured, let's say things you don't believe or to do things that you believe to be wrong. And you need to start to strategize and plan how you can rectify that so that you can say what you mean. Like if you're negotiating with a marital partner, for example, and there are issues in your marriage that aren't making you happy, well, the first thing is you have to take note of that, right, to see that you're actually unhappy. The second is that you have to be willing to engage in a certain amount of conflict, because in order to sort out what's disturbing you, you're going to have to lay your concerns out on the table and say, well, look, this is bothering me. You don't have to say, well, I'm right and you're wrong and you have to fix this. You have to say, well, I've noticed that this pattern of interaction or lack of interaction, say, in our relationship is making me resentful and angry. And the danger of that, of course, is you're going to take it out on yourself and your partner. The danger is passive aggressiveness. You're not going to respond to your partner positively when they do something good if you're resentful about them. And you're not going to respond to yourself properly. And so you have to lay it out on the table, but sort of in a spirit of ignorant humility. It's like, look, I'm frustrated. I'm feeling this way about our relationship. Here's what I think might be going wrong, maybe on my part and maybe on your part. And here's what I envision as a possible solution. that's also really necessary if you're going to say what you have to say, which is to manifest yourself properly in the world. Is you can't just complain about what's wrong. You have to think, well, what would my minimal preconditions for satisfaction be? You have to offer that to the person that you're negotiating with. And so then you learn to abide by the truth to the degree that you can do that. And no one does it perfectly, but it's very useful because you're not storing up a whole sequence of memories about how you were unfairly treated and abused and betrayed. Instead, you're trying to stay on top of it and to note your unhappiness and dissatisfaction when it manifests itself, and to accept that that's the case, and then to analyze that to see if it's your problem, like I said, with regards to maturity, or if it indicates that there's an injustice in the manner in which you and the world are interacting, and then to work to set that right, even in small ways. And so it's a matter of characterological development, and that makes you stronger over time. And partly what you need, in order to do that, is you have to really understand. We do this. This is why we built in the future authoring program. We built this section where you have to outline your most dismal future, right? What your future would be like if you let all your bad habits and characterological weaknesses have the upper hand. And the reason we did this is because you can't straighten yourself out merely as a consequence of hope. Let's say you lay out a vision for the future and you think about what your life would be, what you'd like your life to be like. And then that makes you hopeful and it motivates you because it gives you something worthwhile and higher order to work for, right? And that's useful. That's positive emotion working for you, because positive emotion is experienced in relationship to goals. But it's not as useful as also being chased by something you're terrified by. And if you have a good sense of how you'd fall apart if you stayed weak, and just exactly what kind of hell that would be, then when you determine to do something, like to tell the truth and to say what you think and to not do things that you hate, then you're going to be pulled along by the purpose that your vision has provided for you, but also pushed along by your desire to avoid the worst forms of hell that you've already outlined for yourself personally. And that can also help you be brave enough to stand up in a situation that would require conflict, because if you have something to say and you have something to negotiate about with someone, then there's going to be a certain amount of conflictual dialogue that accompanies that, right? To lay out a set of problems and to describe the fact forthrightly that those problems characterize a relationship, and then to seek for solutions, is quite stressful in the short term. And it's really easy to avoid. And so people avoid it all the time, and then they store up grievances across the span of their relationships, and eventually the grievances mount to the point where they return in monstrous form and just eat everything up. That's where you get divorces, or that's where you explode at your boss and end up fired, or that's where you develop high blood pressure over 15 years because you can't stand all the accumulated monsters in your closet, and you drink yourself into oblivion because you can't stand your life. That's all very counterproductive. But it's easy to avoid that necessary conflict on a moment-to-moment basis because it's very stressful to speak forthrightly about genuine conflicts, especially when you're dealing with important parts of your life. But otherwise, you don't straighten them out, and then you have to carry all that forward. So you need to be terrified of the consequences of not speaking your piece. And that can counterbalance the terror of actually trying to have a conversation. So, and you also have to look with regards to the shadow ideas. Like, you have to get in touch with the depths of your anger. Lots of people are resentful about all sorts of things. They're resentful about old women, and they're resentful about men, and they're resentful about the patriarchy, and they're resentful about the left wing, and they're resentful about the right wing, and they're resentful about politicians, and they're resentful about the cataclysmic force of nature and its ability to make people sick and suffer, and they're resentful about their own inadequacies and about their bad parenting, and God, the list is just bloody endless, and that can make you very, very angry. That's part of that resentment. And cynical and bitter and dark and full of fantasies about destruction and the desire to bring things down and the wish that everyone else suffered. And the desire to shake your fist at God. All of that's really dark. Jung said, well, the human shadow extends all the way down to hell. And he really meant that, because all the terrible things that people are motivated to do are associated with that shadow domain. And like, none of you are saints in any likelihood. You have a terrible capacity for destructiveness. And when you start to consult your resentment and to see how angry you are, it can terrify you to see the depths of that anger. Sometimes that will manifest itself in very destructive fantasies, which you might not want to become conscious of because they're so... le succès sans l'intégrité. So in the second volume of Harry Potter, correct me if I have any of these details wrong. You remember there's that snake, the basilisk? So there's this magic castle, right? You got... I've always been surprised that I've been able to teach what I've been teaching in universities, because I've always regarded it as crazily radical in a sense, It's crazily radical in a conservative way. I don't know what to make of that.
Your teaching is crazily radical.
In a conservative way, yeah. I mean, it's in a conservative way because I think that the past not only has value, we cannot live without the integration of the past. No more than you can live as an individual without integrating your past. I mean, we're historical creatures. Right, and without, if we're not united consciously with the past, then we're divided internally and socially, and that has consequences. So some of them are playing themselves out in the political divisions in the current world, but the consequences can be fatal. So, what's the saying? A house divided amongst itself cannot stand. Right, exactly. And the house is a very, very, to the degree that any symbol is universal, the house is a pretty universal symbol for the structure of the psyche. So,
flowing on from that, it's interesting to hear you call it radical conservatism, because there's a few quotes that I transcribed that from the Ideology, Logos and Belief lecture, which I remember having a kind of hair stand up on the back of my neck moment when I heard you say this. I don't know what happens to a person if they bring themselves completely into alignment. I've had intimations of what that might mean. We don't understand the world very well. We don't understand how the world could be mastered if it was mastered completely. We don't know how an individual might manage that. We don't know what transformations that might make possible. That's mysticism rather than religion, is it not?
well, I don't know if you could draw a distinction between those two things to some degree, because you could say that in a religious system there's two components, and people are temperamentally inclined to align with one or the other. There's a dogmatic component, so the conservatives are more likely to align with that, and there's an active mystical component, which updates the... What would be a practical approach for developing your shadow? Well, that's a good one. Let's do a little review of Jungian psychology. The first thing is, if you want to know about this, the proper source is Carl Jung's Collected Works, Volume 9, and there's two parts to Volume 9, A and B, published as separate texts. And Volume 9 is called Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, and the other one is called Ion. But in Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, there's a good discussion of the persona and the shadow. And the persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with the women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona. And a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say harmless, but we could say a good person. But a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance. I read this interesting commentary a little while ago on a statement by Christ in the New Testament, and the statement generally interpreted is that the meek shall inherit the earth, but I was looking up the multiple translations of the word meek, and meek is actually derived from a Greek word, of course, because the Bible, at least some of the original forms of the Bible, were in Greek. And that word didn't exactly mean meek. It meant something like those who have weapons and the ability to use them, but determined to keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that means that people who are capable of force, let's say, but decide not to use it, are in the proper moral position. And Nietzsche commented on that a fair bit too. You know, he thought of most morality as cowardice, not because morality itself was cowardice, but because most people who are cowards disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be harmful, say, or to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity, and that's a really bad idea. So, you know, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So now, with regards to, so that's the persona, and the persona is the mask that you wear, and that's what persona means, is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming. You know, and you might think, well, that's a bit of an overstatement, but Jung was very interested in phenomena such as, say, the psychological phenomena that would characterize the actions of someone who might be an Auschwitz camp guard, for example. And, you know, that's a pretty monstrous form of behavior. And the thing about Auschwitz camp guards is that there's no reason to assume, really, that they were much different than normal people. Now, there would have been exceptions, obviously. But, and what that means is that perhaps you too could be an Auschwitz camp guard, and perhaps you would even derive some enjoyment out of it, and you might think not, but you shouldn't think not so quickly. And what that also implies is that if you could see what that meant when you looked in the mirror and looked at yourself, you might run away screaming, because you'd have a revelation of just exactly what the human being is capable of. And that's a very unpleasant revelation, and also one of the things that stops people from being enlightened, because that revelation of the evil of the self is part of the journey to enlightenment, and an early part. Now, the shadow would be all the parts of the personality that the persona rejects, and that might be the aggressive elements. Certainly, that's the case for people who are hyper-agreeable. And now you can tell, I think one of the best, there's two pathways to the development of the shadow, and they're tightly allied with one another. The fundamental pathway is truth, and that's to face the bitter truth about yourself. But to break that down more particularly, you might think about that as the capacity to observe your own resentment. You're going to be resentful and bitter in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you watch that resentment and bitterness, you'll see that it produces fantasies that can be unbelievably dark. And that can be very frightening, and you might not want to admit to yourself that you're actually capable of having fantasies like that, or impulses like that, or aggressive feelings like that. But the thing is that if those aggressive feelings and impulses and fantasies are integrated into your character, it's like you're opening up a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very forceful and strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous, because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. And it's often weak people. For example, it's weak men, generally speaking, who rape. You know, that's a very, very common occurrence, and that's a violent act, but it's born out of weakness, not out of strength, that's for sure. And so, anyways, you attend to your resentment honestly, and you observe yourself and what you're actually like. You've got to pay attention as if you don't know yourself, as if you might harbor hidden devils, and then maybe they'll emerge. Now, Jung also felt that sort of embedded inside the shadow were the contrasexual tendencies. And so, for example, sometimes you see people who are well-developed, men, let's say, we can also talk about women in this regard. Men who've integrated their shadow often also develop a kind of peculiar grace that would be a consequence of not only allowing their aggressive side to step forward, but also their feminine and compassionate side that they may have kept squelched because of embarrassment about it, or because they've been harassed for being weak, or any number of things. So, but the practical approach for developing your shadow, I would say, is to contemplate and consider your resentment and notice what it says. Because your resentment will also tell you what you have to say. So look at what happened in Google this weekend. James Damore wrote that memo, and you can imagine he was pretty angry and perhaps even somewhat resentful at having to attend that diversity seminar. And I'm really just using this as an example. But what he did was decide that meant that he had something that he had to say. And then look at the consequences of that, man. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so, if you're feeling oppressed at work, or you're oppressed in your life, or you're oppressing yourself, then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter, and maybe even like Cain in the story of Cain and Abel, because Cain is sort of the archetypal bitter man. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness, and that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it, because you might be wrong, and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny, and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. And so many workplaces become toxic, to use a terrible cliche, because the people in them won't speak up for what they actually want, or they speak up too late, and then they're all twisted up about it, and they're torturing other people because they're so unhappy, and so forth and so on. So, practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty. And Jung said that a genuine moral effort was a good substitute for psychotherapy. One of the things Jung said about the shadow, and this is, I would say, one of the primary impediments to enlightenment, is that if you start looking at your motives for misbehaving, and I mean by that something very specific. I don't mean that you're misbehaving by someone else's standards. I don't mean that. I mean, when you know by your own standards that you're doing something that's devious or malevolent or underhanded, you know it, and you still do it. So it's your own judgment you're bringing to bear on yourself. If you look at why you're doing that, the longer you look at it, the deeper a hole you dig. And so this is the motif of Dante's Inferno, fundamentally. So Dante's Inferno is a story about, I can't remember his name, unfortunately. Might be Dante, in fact, although I don't remember. He's led into hell by Virgil, who's an ancient philosopher, thinker. And hell has levels. And so the outer level is, and this is a Christianized version of hell, because there's hells of all sorts, but this is a Christianized version. And so on the outermost levels of hell, which is sort of like normal life, are the ancient philosophers, and they're still in hell because they weren't Christian, but it's kind of like, it's like cheap motel hell instead of the full pit thing, And so then Dante goes deeper and deeper into hell until he gets right to the bottom of it. And it's been a while since I read it, but if I remember correctly, Satan himself is encased in ice at the bottom of hell, surrounded by people who betray others. And so Dante's notion was that the worst of all possible violations of moral behavior was betrayal, and they're in the deepest levels of hell. And I really like that idea. I think it's true, because if you trust me, then you're manifesting the necessary courage that puts someone through life. If you're smart, you don't trust me because you're naive. You trust me knowing that I'm full of snakes and so are you, but maybe we could cooperate and move things along nicely, and we could reduce each other to our word, and we could cooperate. But you're awake, and then I betray that, then I'm undermining your necessary faith in life and humanity. And you can really hurt someone that way, like sometimes it's self-betrayal. But you can really do someone in that. We can really traumatize them so that they can't recover. And so it's a really terrible thing to do to someone. And maybe it's the worst thing, and that was Dante's idea. And it's tied in. That makes very interesting reading if you read it at the same time as Milton's Paradise Lost, because those are metaphysical explorations. This is what they are. They're metaphysical explorations of the terrible places you can end up, and that people do end up. And also a metaphysical explanation of what spirit takes you there. So, because you might ask, well, why do you betray someone? And that is a deep question. And so you'll have your specific reasons, but under that, there'll be some other reasons. And under that, there'll be some other reasons. And under that, there'll be some other reasons. And if you go all the way to the bottom, you come up with the ultimate reasons why you betrayed someone. And when you look at that, that will not be pretty. That's when your proclivity for evil, let's say, unites with the general human proclivity for evil, and you discover just exactly what you're capable of. And so Jung's notion was that, well, that was a full encounter with the shadow, which is, I suppose, partly what this course is about, because one of the things that I believe I told you at the beginning was that I was going to try to help you understand how it might be that you could be an Auschwitz guard. And to really understand that, that's a horrifying thing to understand. But I'll tell you, if you want to grow some teeth, that's a really good thing to understand. So we were talking about your capacity to negotiate before. Like, if you aren't a monster, you cannot negotiate. But if you've got that under control, then you don't have to be a monster. It's really paradoxical. So if you're just naive, well, you end up in jail when a marionette master has control over you. That's not helpful. So that's not good. That just means you're useless and you can be manipulated. You won't go out of your way to be malevolent, but it's mostly because you just don't have the skills, the organizational skills, or even the depth to do that. You know, you're good because you're harmless. That's not good. That's easily manipulated. And so you think, well, how do you get out of that? Well, partly you watch people because you know what they're like, because you know what you're like, but you also know what you could do and would do if you were pushed. And so you don't have to show much of that when you're negotiating with someone for them to take you really seriously. So it's a strange thing, you know, but one of the things Jung pointed out too was that what you most need to know will be found where you least want to look. And that's because you haven't already looked there. And so it's a little different for everyone, right? Because your particular place you don't want to look isn't going to be the same as your place. But you're going to have a place you don't want to look. And what you haven't discovered, that's where it is. And so that's all partly going to be discovered by you looking at what you're capable of, what you're truly capable of. You can say things to people like tell the truth and be good, and those are cliches, obviously, and so they lack power because they're cliches. But you can take them apart and utilize them in a manner that stops being a cliche, and you do that by being more humble about them, I would say, because maybe you can't tell the truth because you don't know what the truth is. But one thing you can do is you can stop saying things that you know to be untrue. And you might say, well, how do I know that they're untrue? And the answer to that is, well, you need a whole philosophy of truth, the elaboration of an entire philosophy of truth to answer that question. And so we're not going to bother answering that question because, in some sense, at the moment, it's beside the point. That isn't the issue. The issue is there are times in your life where you know that the thing that you're saying is not true. It's a deception. It's a lie of some sort, and you're using it to manipulate yourself or another person or the world. And you're also possessed, fully possessed of the idea that you can get away with it. And there's a satanic arrogance about that. In fact, that is the archetypal arrogance that's portrayed in the mythological character of Satan, because Satan is precisely the archetype of the element of the mind that believes that it can twist and bend the structure of reality without paying the price for that. And you can't imagine anything that's more arrogant than that, because really, you really think that you could twist the structure of reality and that's going to work out for you without it snapping back. It's so obvious that can't work, that everyone knows it. But anyways, back to the initial point, is that you know by the rules of the game that you yourself are playing, that some of the times you're violating the rules of the game that you're playing. And the first issue with regards to, say, stating the truth, or behaving in a responsible manner would be merely stop cheating at whatever game it is that you've chosen to play. That's a good start, and that'll straighten out your life. It'll start to straighten out your life. And so, well, the flood. How does the flood tie into this? Well, we live in a corrupt structure. We're corrupt as individuals. We live in a corrupt structure, and part of that corruption is just happenstance. It's the way things fall apart. But the other part of it is that not only are we not aiming up, we're actually aiming down. And the flood story is a warning. And it's a very clear warning. And the warning is, if you aim down enough, and then if enough of you aim down at the same time, everything will degenerate into something that's indistinguishable from the chaos from which things emerged at the beginning of time. It's something like that, because the cosmos that's presented in mythological representations is chaos versus order, right? The order is on top, you might say, and the chaos is always underneath. And the chaos can break through, or the order can crumble, and you can fall into the chaos, and that chaos is intermingled with potential. And the way that you destroy the order and let the chaos rise back up, which is exactly how it's portrayed in the flood story, is by inhabiting the corpse of your father. That's one mythological motif. And feeding on the remains with no gratitude and no attempt to replenish what it is that you're taking from. And the warning in the flood story is, don't do that for very long, because things will happen that are so awful you cannot possibly imagine it. And that'll happen to you personally, and it'll happen to your family, and it'll happen to your community, and it's happened to me over and over throughout history. And it's quite interesting, it's very soon after the story of Cain and Abel, when you see evil enter the world in the story of Adam and Eve, along with self-consciousness. And evil there is the ability, that's the knowledge of good and evil, that's the ability to hurt other people self-consciously, to know what you're doing. And then, of course, instantly, Cain takes that to the absolute extreme, and he uses that capacity to destroy really what he loves best. He gets as close as a human being can to destroying the divine ideal, because of course his brother is Abel, and Abel is favored by God, and Cain destroys him, which Cain tells God at the end of that episode that his punishment is more than he can bear. And I think the reason for that is, where are you once you destroy your own ideal? What's left for you? There's nowhere to go. There's no up. And when there's no up, there's a lot of down. And there's an idea that was put forth very nicely in Milton's Paradise Lost, when he was describing, from a psychological perspective, essentially what hell is. And hell is, you're in hell to the degree that you're distant from the good. That might be a good way of thinking about it. And if you destroy your own ideal, which you do with jealousy and resentment and the desire to pull down people who you would like to be, let's say, then you end up in a situation that's indistinguishable from hell. And the way the biblical story unfolds is
because it was uneven.
It's Cain,
I went down twice so far,
and then it's the flood. And so Cain adopts this mode of being that's antithetical to being itself, or at least positive being itself. He does it voluntarily. He does it knowing full well what he's doing. And the net consequence of this, that as it ripples through the entire social structure, is that God stands back and says, this whole thing has got so bad, the only thing we can do is wipe it to the ground. And that is no joke. That's exactly how things work. And one of the things that's extraordinarily terrifying about that sequence of stories, and I believe this to be true, I think I realized this independently of any of the analysis that I was doing of mythological stories, because I looked at what happened in places like the Soviet Union, in Maoist China, in Nazi Germany, the most penetrating observers of those societies, the people who were most interested in how it was that those absolute catastrophes came about, all said the same thing. It was rooted in the degeneration of the individuals who made up the society. You hear, well, people were following orders. It's like, no, that explanation doesn't hold water. Or that you'd be punished if you resisted. Well, there was some truth in that, but nowhere near as much as people might think, especially at the beginnings of the process. More it was that people decided, each and every one of them, to turn a blind eye to the catastrophes and to participate in the lies. And that worked the entire societies, and they went, they veered their way downward to something as closely approximating hell as you could hope to manage, especially in places like Nazi Germany and, well, in all three of those places, in Maoist China, in the the Soviet Union. So the thing that's so frightening about, one of the things that's so frightening about the stories in Genesis is they say something very clear, which is that your moral degeneration contributes in no small way to the degeneration of the entire cosmos. You say, well, I would like my life to be meaningful. People say that. Really, would you? Really? You really would like your life to be meaningful? You think maybe people would trade a little nihilism to not have to face that particular realization, and I think people do that all the time. It's a terrible way to realize, but we are networked together. That's the price of, or let's say that's the vulnerability that's associated with our intense capacity to communicate. And it is certainly possible that the ripples of our individual actions have consequences that are far beyond the limits of our immediate consciousness. And I also think people know that too. They know that in the way that people know things when they don't want to know them, which means they know them embodied, they can feel them, they can sense them, they have an emotional response to them, but there's no damn way they're going to let them become articulate because they don't want to know. And when you're feeling guilty and ashamed about the things you've done or not done, and I know that can get out of hand as well, it's often because there is a crooked little part of you that's aiming at the worst possible outcome. You know, one of the things Jung said about the shadow, you know, Jung's famous idea that everyone has a dark side and that dark side needs to be incorporated and made conscious. Jung said that the shadow of the human being reaches all the way to hell. And he actually, that's the thing that's so interesting about reading Carl Jung, is he actually means what he says. It's not a metaphor. It's like the part of you that's twisted against being is aligned with the part of the cosmos, let's say, the conscious cosmos, that's aiming at making everything as terrible as it can possibly be. And, you know, it's a terrible shock to realize that. It's partly why people don't realize it. It's something that people keep at an arm's length. It's the same as recognizing yourself as a Nazi concentration camp guard, which is a very useful exercise because there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't have been or still could be one. So, and if you think otherwise, then all the more reason for assuming that you would be unable to resist the temptation if it was in fact offered to you. And if you don't think it's a temptation, then there's so much that you don't know about human beings that you're not even in the game. Because if it wasn't a temptation, then people bloody well wouldn't have done it. And plenty of people did it, and it's no wonder.